Imagine being transported to a completely different world and gaining the power to form contracts with any creature. What would you do with that power? Would you contract cute pets just to cuddle them? Or would you make contracts with ferocious beasts to protect you? You might even perhaps form a group of beautiful girls and start a harem in this new world. Unfortunately, there is always a gap between fiction and reality. Life in another world is not that easy. The protagonist of this story is called useless by everyone because he doesn't know how to make contracts the way he's supposed to. On top of that, things are more dangerous than usual. He wonders why these people behave as if nothing is happening. He also questions whether the city where he lives is unaware of their existence and if perhaps a city of pearls has turned into a massive feeding ground for these things. The protagonist thinks that he hasn't even started his Isekai adventure or formed his harem, and this cannot be the end for him. So he decides that if no creature will accept him, he'll tread a path no one dared to take, and he resolves to form a contract with himself. He swallows a pearl, which once consumed binds the life, soul, and consciousness of the target entirely to the summoner. He gains complete control over his summoner and becomes obligated to obey his own commands, making himself his own summoner. This way, whether mutant beasts or a damn zombie apocalypse, anyone or anything that threatens him in this world, the protagonist intends to eliminate them all. In the protagonist's previous life, he was a paramedic who died in an accident. After his death, he woke up in this world, reborn in a fantastical place of awakened beings and mutant beasts. In this life, he is also an awakened. He possesses contract gems which consume stamina and mental energy to materialize. Once consumed, the target obeys the summoner's will. This should have been an incredible power, but there's a small flaw. As the protagonist manipulates a gem, a girl asks what he's doing. His name is Zhang Ping, and he tells his friend Su Jingo that he's not doing anything special and asks if she wants some candy. The girl knows very well what that gem does and says no one would want to be controlled by him. The problem mentioned earlier is that the target must be well-informed and willing to form a contract. Otherwise, nothing happens when the gem is consumed. The original owner of the body was so frustrated with this power that he nearly died of anger. But the protagonist has experience from his previous life that taught him how to manage stress. His friend says the world is too big, and she's sure there must be someone out there willing to be controlled by him. Zhang says that's easy to say, but doesn't believe it. However, for a brief moment, he considers it and comes to a conclusion. He then takes his own gem and swallows it, leaving his friend completely confused. At that moment, an aura emanates from him, and the protagonist becomes his own summoner. Su Jingo asks if he's okay, and the protagonist replies that he is. She tells Zhang not to scare her like that again. Afterward, the girl says it's getting late and that she's heading back to the dormitory. She needs to prepare a report for a city guard and says he doesn't need to wait for her. Zhang asks if she's really willing to go through with it. The girl says yes, and that she's already learned everything they could teach her. Now it's time to experience real combat and improve even more. For her, it makes sense to join the city guard to protect her homeland, and now she has a chance to make that dream come true. She tells Zhang not to feel sad because he'll become strong enough someday, and then they'll be able to work together. But the protagonist thinks he'll probably end up on a farm or something. He believes they won't see much of each other after this. Even so, it's kind of hard to say goodbye. The worst part is that the original owner had a crush on the girl since childhood. Zhang feels an overwhelming urge to hug his friend, and he ends up doing it. He realizes his body moved on its own. Su Jingo, utterly embarrassed, steps back and says she really has to go now. Thus, the two say their goodbyes, and the protagonist tells her to take care. With an affectionate look, she says the same to him. After bidding farewell to his friend, Zhang stops to think about the fact that his body moved on its own and wonders if he unconsciously gave himself a command to hug her, or he thinks it might have been just a coincidence. Either way, he needs to figure out how much control he truly has over himself. Next, he tries to command his body to fly but ends up face first on the ground. Then he decides to try something safer and orders the Iron Mountain stance. Afterward, he attempts a somersault, but he crashes to the ground and ends up completely exhausted. However, he discovers that he can command his body to do various things as long as it's within human capability. The coolest part is that he can copy physical movements he's never practiced, relying solely on his memory. This means, theoretically, he could master any martial art. All he needs to do is increase his physical abilities and then he'll become stronger. But there's one more thing he needs to test. The next day, he opens his eyes and realizes he's in the cafeteria. He immediately feels his legs are completely worn out. Then he remembers that before going to sleep, he gave his body the command to do a morning run, and his body followed the order even while he was unconscious. Zhang is happy that it worked because now he knows his body can follow his commands even when his mind is unconscious. After that, he checks to see if anyone is looking at him but notices a famous student named Leu Sizzy approaching. She's like the queen of the campus and draws attention wherever she goes, but the protagonist simply thinks that, like him, she also woke up early. However, he starts hearing a strange noise and becomes extremely frightened, wondering, what is this? Zhang sees several monstrous creatures around him, but when he looks at the other students, he realizes they can't see them. He immediately finds it hard to believe that this could be Leu Sizzy's doing. Nevertheless, he sees the girl in a bizarre form, saying that Zhang Ping looks a bit pale. As the girl approaches him and asks this, Zhang sees her in a monstrous form but thinks he needs to compose himself and stay calm in this situation. So he responds that he's fine and says he just had a nightmare last night and couldn't sleep well. Then he stands up and says that class is about to start, so he walks away. Leu Sizzy wonders if that smell of fear was just her imagination. Far from there, the protagonist wonders why there's a mutant beast in his school and why no one else has noticed. He even considers that he might be hallucinating. Even so, he thinks it's better to talk to a teacher about it. However, when he enters the classroom, he sees a bizarre creature feeding on a person. Terrified, Zhang runs out of there and ends up on the school rooftop. He starts freaking out, saying that something is very wrong and even thinking this place might be a kind of hell. But upon reflection, he realizes he started seeing these things after he ate the contract gem. Whatever it is, he needs to snap out of this state. So he eats another gem. The effects of the first time repeat, but this time, a progress analysis begins. Afterward, the analysis concludes and a playback starts. All of this leaves the protagonist quite confused, and he begins to think he awakened some kind of analysis ability. When he tries to analyze himself, he realizes that's exactly what happened. After awakening his system and seeing various pieces of information, he wonders where it all came from and whether eating the second gem triggered it. After reviewing everything, he knows he has become his own summoner. In addition to being the only one capable of controlling himself, this means illusions no longer work on him. As a result, he can see through people's disguises. They are all high-level celestial foxes, and since Zhang is low-level, he stands no chance against them. Furthermore, they have cognitive distortion abilities, allowing them to devour people while others only see a pair of students chatting. He remembers that his friend Su Jingo also has mental powers. She belongs to the psychic class and might be able to help. So after school, he goes to find her. But as he walks down the street, he notices that the monsters are everywhere, not just in his school. He can see through their disguises and wonders how many of them are out there. After walking for a while, he arrives at the city guard's headquarters. Upon entering, he comes across a very beautiful receptionist and says he's there to see someone named Su Jingo who should have enlisted today. As the receptionist works, Zhang manages to see her true appearance. He then realizes that celestial foxes are even inside the city guard and wonders if even high-level awakened beings can't see through their illusions. Soon after, his friend shows up and asks what he's doing there. The protagonist responds that he just wanted to make sure she's adapting well because he was worried. So Jingo says she's fine and wants to introduce her new teammates, saying they're all good to her. Zhang says that's great. His friend mentions she's determined to get stronger, strong enough to take down the beasts that killed her parents. Speaking of which, she says they're short-staffed, and asks if he would like her to recommend him for the city guard. Zhang says he's not ready for that, and besides, his power is useless for such a role. She says that's a shame. The protagonist says he's glad she's doing well and doesn't want to bother her anymore. Then he turns around and leaves. He tells Su Jingo will see her around but knows that all her new friends are infiltrated foxes. As he leaves, he thinks that the city guards should be the strongest and shouldn't fall for illusions like this. Even so, his friend joined today and is already surrounded by them. Zhang knows the foxes haven't just infiltrated his school but the entire city. Everyone in Pearl City is merely cattle, a herd in the enemy's twisted game. The protagonist has been conducting some investigations using his analysis ability. Most of these foxes are mid to high level, but not even the city guard, which includes several high-level awakened, has been able to defeat these monsters. The one that killed Leu Sizzy was on another level. His intuition tells him that if he tries to analyze that thing, he'll be discovered immediately, because it's either at the peak level or possibly at king level. And any fox capable of fighting awakened individuals must be a heavyweight. That must be the work of that king as well. Unlike most beasts, celestial foxes are clever. They're masters of disguise and can blend in effortlessly, but it's all an act. Their main targets are powerful users or important figures. As for the rest of the people, they're just cattle, food kept nearby for later consumption. Facing them head-on is suicide, but the protagonist doesn't want to stand by and watch innocent people die. If only he were stronger, he'd try something. A week later, the protagonist has been waking up earlier each day. He thinks it happens because he's pushing his body to its limit. Sleeping less has become necessary. Zhang has been training hard these past few days, but has only leveled up once. In addition to training, he's been trying to create more gems and consuming them, hoping to awaken again. But ever since he awakened this analysis ability, all his gems have become less vibrant and consuming them has had no effect on him. However, today was different. He managed to create a very vibrant gem. It doesn't seem more appetizing, but he hopes it works this time. Upon consuming the gem, he feels a very different sensation. His status panel shows that it worked, and he even acquired a new skill. Now he can investigate at night. The contract gem leveled up, making the protagonist think it might be tied to his own level. He wonders if this means leveling up always grants a new ability. If that's true, he imagines he'll become unstoppable. Now he wants to stop procrastinating because it's time to train, and he'll take the opportunity to test this new skill. With the Night Wanderer skill activated, his vision becomes better than it is during the day. While running across campus, the protagonist spots a ring on the ground. He stops to pick up the item, and sees through the system window the attributes it holds. Not only that, but the ring of assassination reveals that when worn, all living beings will unconsciously ignore him. High-level awakened individuals and above are immune. From a distance, he sees the imposter Leu Sizzy and another man, whom the protagonist deduces to be the ring's owner. But he's certain the man sees Leu Sizzy as human and wonders if this means they're enemies. However, he thinks that's impossible, because Leu Sizzy was an orphan, and she would never make enemies like this. There's only one explanation for it. Besides Zhang, there are other people in Pearl City fighting these monsters in secret. Suddenly, he realizes his presence has been noticed and hides. The monster tries to search for the ring but doesn't find it and concludes someone must have passed by. But it doesn't sense any trace of presence and wonders if that's even possible. It says whoever it was must be at least at the fear level and wants to report this to their highness immediately. Hearing this makes Zhang realize the enemy's ploy. They dropped the ring on purpose. Returning the item now would only make him more suspicious, so he decides to keep the ring for now. 5:30 in the morning, it's still dark, and Zhang thinks that the Night Wanderer skill combined with the ring should make him completely invisible. He realizes that being strong isn't just about the powers you possess, but also the equipment you can acquire. But outside his room, Zhang begins to hear footsteps. Not only that, but he hears his name being called and asks who's speaking. However, the voice tries to warn him of danger. When the monsters enter his room, they find the window open. But when they look at the bed, they see him sleeping and identify him as their target. Immediately, they plan to kill Zhang. One of the monsters approaches the protagonist and notices he hasn't shown any sign of emotion. It comments that if it were him who had escaped, he would have already woken up and fought for his life. Not only that, but it can't sense the ring either. The other asks their highness why they don't just kill him, arguing that this human runs every morning, but today he didn't, which means something is off about him. However, the highness says it's not him, and that the protagonist is just a worthless human, and they shouldn't waste food on him. After they leave, Zhang wakes up and says that was a close call. He forgot about his morning runs, but fortunately, he'd ordered his body to sleep and avoid raising suspicion. He also remembers hearing Su Jingo's voice but wonders if it was just his imagination. However, he says now isn't the time to get sentimental and that he needs to get stronger to avenge her. For now, he'll pretend to live a normal life to avoid suspicion. In the cafeteria, some students comment that earlier in the morning, a body was found sliced in half by a city guard. And the body belongs to the infamous Black Death Star, the most feared assassin in Pearl City, the same one who injured the city lord. Zhang realizes he saw that man during the night. And if the monster killed him so easily, it means Leu Sizzy's strength is more terrifying than he imagined. But he wonders why they left the body out in the open. It must be a warning to anyone working against the foxes. Soon, they'll likely increase their surveillance, so Zhang wants to find some protective equipment. After classes, he visits the blacksmith shops. But apparently, all the blacksmith shops in the city are under the control of the celestial foxes. After successfully conducting several analyses, the protagonist unlocks intermediate analysis. Now he can see the growth potential of enemies, and when he encounters a fox merchant, his system provides him with all the detailed stats of the enemy. Zhang doesn't stop at the shop because he needs to find one that isn't under their control. Eventually, he arrives at a shop where he overhears a conversation about a high-quality sword with excellent craftsmanship. Inside, the seller tells a man that if he's interested in buying, he'll give him the lowest price on the market, even though it might be painful for him. The man, who is elderly, doesn't understand what the seller is saying because his hearing is quite poor. Irritated, the seller asks if he's deaf or something, and doesn't even notice a new customer has entered the shop. Upon seeing the protagonist, he wonders who this kid is, and asks how he dares to steal from him. Meanwhile, Zhang analyzes a sword, and realizes that, due to its poor quality, it's about to break. The seller, upon seeing this, says Zhang has ruined everything, and asks if the protagonist has any idea who he is. He then claims to be a direct disciple of Master Mei from the Exingyi Martial Arts Academy. The seller warns Zhang to prepare himself, because he's about to attack him. However, with just a slap, Zhang interrupts him. The seller accuses Zhang of fighting dirty. He then tells Zhang to leave his shop while he still can, and Zhang wonders if he's serious. As Zhang turns to leave, the seller attempts a surprise attack, but Zhang stops him again and asks if it isn't the seller who's fighting dirty. Suddenly, a woman appears, saying she left the shop for just 5 minutes, and now things have gotten lively. She then asks the man on the floor if he'll leave the shop on his own or if she needs to show him the way out. The fake seller runs away, apologizing. Zhang says he might as well check out another shop, but the owner stops him from leaving. She then tells him that they need to talk. The protagonist asks what she wants to talk about. She replies that she's just a maiden working hard every day to make a living. And she also needs to take care of her uncle, who became distraught after his daughter disappeared. She says the protagonist has a good physique and personality, so she suggests he stay and become a blacksmith as well as help manage the shop and take care of her uncle. She also offers a salary with food and accommodation included. Zhang thinks that if he can learn how to forge, it will help him save money on equipment. Moreover, this shop doesn't seem to be under the control of the foxes, so he says he has a dream to become the king of blacksmiths. The shop owner says he's made a good choice, as expected from someone with sharp instincts. This makes Zhang think he first needs to survive working with her before conquering his goals. A few days later, he's already working as an employee of a shop. The protagonist asks Shu Chang if it's okay for him to handle this task. The shop owner says it's fine and no one ever goes to that location. So he gets to work and Chang says Zhang is very skilled. She explains that this is the exclusive technique of folded forging, where he needs to let the different materials blend together as if kneading dough. Chu Chang tells him to wait a moment while she goes to the storage room to get the mold. She also mentions there's charcoal in the bucket nearby and reminds him not to let the fire die out. Zhang gets confused about which bucket contains the charcoal and panics when he sees the fire almost dying. In desperation, he grabs the first bucket he sees and throws its contents into the fire to keep it alive. But this causes a massive explosion. Surrounded by fire, Zhang wonders if he's dead. Suddenly, a hole opens in his chest, which absorbs all the flames around him, leaving the protagonist utterly shocked. He's incredulous that all the fire was extinguished. Inside his body, his heart burns with flames. He tries to analyze the situation to understand what's happening. Upon doing so, he discovers that his growth potential has increased again. And if his guess is correct, every time his potential increases, he awakens a new ability and levels up. But he remembers that everyone has a limit to their growth potential. He wonders if he's the only one capable of awakening multiple abilities as he absorbed the fire using the Fire Devourer skill. Thinking back, he reached level 3 in the morning and consumed the gem. Now he wonders why the effect only activated in the afternoon, speculating that it might require certain conditions. When Chu Chang returns, she asks what happened and how the shop ended up in such a state. She then asks if he used the Scarlet Serpent scale instead of the charcoal, but blames herself for not explaining that it would cause an explosion. Zhang apologizes. However, Chu Chang says the important thing is that he's safe, but questions how he managed to extinguish the fire since it's no easy task when fueled by a serpent scale. Zhang says it's a long story, but Chu Chang notices that the material fusion was successful and mentions that achieving such results requires very high temperatures. This makes her think the protagonist is truly talented, and his skills are more than enough to join one of the 3 great organizations. Zhang comments that people say the City Guard and the investigation team are part of the 3 great organizations. So he asks what the third one is. Chu Chang explains that Pearl City is part of the 3rd organization. However, no one knows its name or what it does. Knowing Zhang was looking for equipment, she says he can keep the dagger. The protagonist sees that the dagger is excellent and asks if it isn't an expensive item. The shop owner says that based on the market value of the materials, it would cost around 100,000, equivalent to 3 years of his salary. Zhang asks how someone on his salary could afford that, but Chu Chang says it's a gift for improving his forging skills. She also mentions that she has a mission to undertake and asks if Zhang is okay with leaving school. He replies that he has already arranged for early graduation. Satisfied, she says that's good. Zhang thinks the shop hasn't been targeted by the foxes because it's not open often, but after this commotion, that's likely to change. He decides to take advantage of the evening and use his Night Wanderer skill to survey the area. Soon the protagonist encounters his first low-level celestial fox. It's the same level as him, but it's equipped with better gear. Being able to defeat the fox, Zhang realizes that while the city guard within Pearl City has completely fallen, the city's investigation team might still be intact. Zhang thinks that if he can deliver the body of a celestial fox to them, he might catch the attention of the higher-ups. But before he can act, someone appears and asks if he's about to attack a little girl. They also warn him not to move or he'll die. The protagonist quickly realizes that this woman is far stronger than he is. His Night Wanderer skill and Assassin's Ring are useless now as she can see him clearly. The woman, appearing in a spirit-like form, tells Zhang to meet her at the training grounds of the orphanage if he doesn't want to die. Zhang asks why she wants to meet there, but she leaves without answering. At least it seems she's not on the Celestial Fox's side, or he would already be dead. He grew up in that orphanage and spent his childhood practicing fighting there, which is why he named the park the training grounds. This makes him think the woman knows him. Not only that, but it seems she has been watching him. That's likely why she stopped him from attacking the fox earlier. Maybe she has a specific reason for wanting to meet him there. But instead of meeting her, the protagonist encounters a mutant beast in the middle of the forest and tries to analyze it. Its stats are not weak and its level is higher than Zhang's, meaning he needs to be cautious. Zhang thinks he can avoid a confrontation if he backs away slowly, but he decides not to retreat, believing he can handle the creature. The children from the orphanage might be its next victims if they walk through the park. With the weapon Chu Chang gave him, he feels confident he can defeat the monster. In all the adventures he's raided, the main character always becomes a combat expert the moment they gain their powers, a complete load of nonsense. He may lack combat experience, but he can command his body to fight. However, he didn't expect the creature to move the way it does, and he's impressed. The monster's armor is too thick, and his dagger can't pierce through it, so he needs to think of another approach. The creature prepares for a ranged attack. Zhang thinks this feels like a video game, except he's the character, so he commands the movements his body should make. He notices that the creature's eyes are the only part of his body not covered, making them its weak spot. The problem is that it coils up to protect itself. He needs to find a way to break the monster's defensive stance. Then he comes up with an idea and says he never imagined those boring history lessons about the Pearl Fist technique would come in handy now. This technique involves crushing the enemy with brute force, perfect for smashing small foes. Thus, the protagonist keeps targeting the weak spot. He manages to defeat the monster and realizes that real combat levels him up much faster than training. Reflecting on it, it's strange that the monster appeared out of nowhere. It feels like someone deliberately placed it there, as there shouldn't be any mutant beasts within the city walls except for the celestial foxes. However, in his distraction, Zhang falls into a trap. He hears someone say he has only 5 minutes. He recognizes the voice. It's the same woman from before. She tells him to prove he's human. This leaves the protagonist trapped and unsure how to prove his true nature. Her demand makes Zhang think that this woman can sense the presence of mutant beasts in the city, but cannot precisely identify them. She must have grown suspicious when Zhang was preparing to attack the small celestial fox. He also suspects that the monster was placed there as a test for him. While Zhang tries to analyze her, the woman begins a countdown. He succeeds and realizes that she's extremely powerful. It's no wonder analyzing her was so difficult, not to mention that the combination of his ring and abilities was useless. Zhang recalls hearing about the Purify Squad but knows nothing about them. He asks if they're part of the third organization alongside the city guard and the investigation team. The woman tells him he only has 1 minute left. In his desperation, Zhang remembers her calling the small park the training grounds. He thinks she must have grown up in the same orphanage as he did, but he doesn't recall anyone named Leu Sizzy. He assumes she might have changed her name. The protagonist then starts calling out names of girls he knew from his childhood, but when he fails to guess her name, the woman becomes irritated. It makes a small cut on him, saying that this doesn't prove he's human. This reaction now apparently confirms that she is Leu Sizzy. She is 3 years older than the protagonist, and when he enrolled in the academy, she graduated and joined the investigation team. As a child, she trained in combat with the protagonist in the same park. Remembering this, the woman reacts positively. Zhang then realizes she really is Leu Sizzy, but she has a second question. She says that according to academy records, his gem contract ability was considered useless due to its impossible activation requirement, and asks what in the world he did. He explains that 2 weeks ago, he swallowed his own contract gem, becoming his own summoned beast, and now has full control over himself. This made him immune to the illusions of mutant beasts, able to see through disguises. And based on his investigation, many celestial foxes are hiding within the city. He believes an entire clan has infiltrated Pearl City. He also explains that their inherent ability is called cognitive distortion. Leu Sizzy asks if he's sure about this. Dong lists the baker from Washing Bakery, the furniture store owner Juan on Lai Street, the 3 blacksmiths on Longju Street, and also the little girl she stopped him from attacking earlier. All of them are low-level celestial foxes, and Leu Sizzy can verify it herself. She leaves, saying she'll be back soon. Then she contacts someone named Jimbo and asks if this information is accurate, saying the first step is to confirm it. Jimbo replies that they've never encountered a celestial fox before, especially not inside the city. However, the cognitive distortion ability has appeared before and matches the description. He also says that he sent a team to apprehend the 2 shop owners, and they should be back shortly. Soon after, Jimbo and his team hear a loud explosion. They wonder what happened. The team returns and informs their leader that the baker went berserk and started attacking as soon as she was taken outside the city. She also tries to attack the leader, but he finds it pathetic, and with a single strike, he defeats the disguised fox. This confirms that the information is true, and they finally know what they're dealing with. He orders his team to alert the others and eliminate the targets immediately. Back at Pearl Academy, Lu Xiu senses something is different. One of her maids asks what's wrong, but she simply flies away. Thinking that Yuji is dead, someone killed her outside the city, and now another one of hers on Lai Street. They killed them instantly, erased their presence, and avoided detection. Now in her fox form, she wonders who these humans are. Zhang asks Leu Sizzy if she verified the information. She says she did, but still isn't convinced about his ability to see through illusions, suspecting it might be a trap. For that reason, she declares that Zhang will be her eyes and ears, that she'll protect him in secret, and that if he finds anything, he must report it to her. The protagonist realizes he'll be both protected and watched, but as long as they deal with the celestial foxes, he's fine with it. Leu Sizzy gives him a jade pendant, explaining that it comes in pairs. One is called cold jade, and its counterpart is called warm jade. She explains that if Zhang is in danger, he only needs to engulf the cold jade in flames and the warm jade will activate. This will alert her to the situation, and she'll come quickly. That said, she also advises Zhang to become stronger, adding that when it comes to safety, he should never completely depend on others. Zhang mentions he's been considering learning martial arts and might enroll in a school, but the tuition fees are exorbitant. Leu Sizzy says she'll request a scholarship from the organization. In the meantime, she advises Zhang to look for a suitable martial arts school, and the protagonist thanks her. After this, the number of foxes in the city decreases significantly. Over the past few days, the Purify Squad has likely been doing their job. Leu Sizzy hasn't even told Zhang her age, making him think she's still not fully trustworthy. If not for the sudden level up of his analysis ability, he might never have discovered she's part of that squad. For now, helping eliminate the foxes is enough for Zhang, and they even gave him 10,000 coins as an initial reward. Later, he notices a woman handing out flyers for a martial arts school, and the protagonist is immediately intrigued. But upon looking at the flyer, he realizes the classes aren't cheap, and the worst part is he's not even sure if it's the right fit for him. But the young woman assures him that every penny will be worth it, stating that the techniques of the Beast King Fist School are famous throughout Pearl City. And if he doesn't believe her, she offers to demonstrate. She then showcases the 3 beginner forms of the Beast King Fist: Cape Monkey style, Giant Crocodile style, and Phoenix Claw style. The Beast King Fist techniques, whether for mobility or striking, are far more advanced than the Pearl Fist. Indeed, it's an impressive set of martial arts. The Cape Monkey style has many variations and is not a fixed style. However, to the protagonist, it's clear that she hasn't trained enough. She isn't even close to showcasing what the Beast King Fist is truly capable of. While Zhang was helping the young woman, 2 men from a rival school appear and ask who gave her permission to distribute flyers there. Zhang completely ignores them, but the young woman says she didn't know she wasn't allowed to hand out flyers in that area. One of the men says that the Beast King Fist techniques are garbage and suggests that Zhang join their Xingyi school instead. Zhang sarcastically asks if he's that guy from somewhere, enraging the man who identifies himself as part of the quintuple lightning strike and threatens Zhang. He also reminds Zhang that he still needs to pay for what he did at the blacksmith shop and claims now is the perfect time. Then, he orders the others to attack, but the young woman says she won't let them hurt Zhang and rushes to defend him. The men become furious and assume battle stances. They warn her not to interfere unless she wants to get hurt too. Checking their stats, Zhang realizes they traded intelligence for brute strength. He wonders if that can really be considered a skill. Zhang then checks the young woman's stats. Her name is Wang Jimin, and she has incredible potential, capable of becoming extremely strong over time. However, at this moment, Zhang thinks she's asking to get beaten up. So he tells her that this is his problem, and then he wants to handle it himself, claiming that since they're 3 against 1, she could get hurt. Zhang reassures her, saying that she just showed him the King Monkey style, and these guys appeared at the perfect time for his training. One of the men charges at him, calling him an arrogant brat, but Zhang begins counterattacking with the first form. Then he transitions into the second form. The lightning man tries to interrupt him, but Zhang finishes with a kick to the groin. Afterward, the lightning man collapses to the ground in an embarrassing manner and is mocked by Zhang. Zhang declares that he's now enrolling in the Beast King school. Wang Jimin exclaims that what he did was incredible since he learned the King Monkey style just by watching it once, and now she wants to learn from him. She claims that with Zhang's help, she'll become stronger much faster. Zhang tells her she has 7 stars of potential and is sure she'll become someone of high rank, perhaps even a king level awakened, someone he might need help from to evolve in the future. Inside the martial arts school, some students are talking. They're panicking because their teacher is about to arrive, and some of them procrastinated on their assignments, thinking the master would take longer to return. Zhang asks why everyone is afraid of the teacher. Wang Jimin explains that he's known for his strictness, and those who don't complete their tasks will be punished. Zhang asks if she's ever been punished. She replies that it happens every day, and she's been there for over a month but still can't execute the basics properly. This makes Zhang wonder if that's something to be proud of. Then the teacher arrives and everyone assumes their positions. His name is Bai Day, and he orders all the slackers to run 50 laps, warning them not to dare perform half-heartedly. Zhang analyzes him and realizes that Bai Day is strong at level 25, nearly on par with Leu Sizzy. Bai approaches Zhang and asks if he's the one who took down those Xingyi clowns. Zhang asks what happens if it was him. The teacher says he wants to find out what Zhang did, and Zhang tells him to calm down, claiming that he's going a bit too far and asking what's the point of attacking a beginner like him. Bai then asks one thing: how did Zhang master the King Monkey style just by watching a single demonstration? As Bai launches quick attacks, Zhang realizes there's no time to dodge. But the master simply pats his head instead of hurting him as Zhang had feared. Bai says that at first he didn't believe it, but now he sees that the boy has talent. He laments the person who showed Zhang the King Monkey style, calling them mediocre since their footwork was completely wrong. However, he assures Zhang not to worry, as he will personally teach him the proper technique. Grateful, Zhang thanks him. Now Bai announces that it's time to see who's been slacking off in their training. He orders the other students to line up for sparring, warning that anyone who doesn't meet his standards will do 500 push-ups, followed by a 16-kilometer run wearing a weighted vest. Zhang thinks this is to be expected of an awakened with physical enhancement abilities. Afterward, Wang Jimin catches his attention, and Zhang asks if something is wrong. She says her teacher doesn't teach her much and asks if Zhang could train her privately after he learns more from the master. Zhang agrees and tells her to meet him at the Iron Soul blacksmith shop after class, where they can train together. She didn't expect him to say yes, but is thrilled. Her stubborn determination reduces her ability to learn new skills by 90%. This girl's skill set is designed to frustrate anyone trying to teach her. Zhang thinks he now understands why Master Bide doesn't have much patience with her. A few days later, they're already training together. At the blacksmith shop, Zhang points out that Wang Jimin is making too many mistakes. He has broken down the King Monkey style into small movements, having her practice each one separately, which somehow proves effective. The protagonist thinks the Beast King Fist is fascinating. After training non-stop over the past few days, he feels his level might be increasing. Chu Chang suddenly yells, asking Zhang to guess who's back. He tells Wang to keep training while he goes to talk to the shop owner. Upon arrival, she says that was a close call. For some reason, it's been harder to spot any animals or mutant beasts around here lately. Chu Chan explains that they had no choice but to venture deeper into the northern forest. While there, they encountered a pack of storm wolves. Zhang asks if she was hurt. She replies no, saying they even managed to hide using her earth-digging shovel. The wolves couldn't find their prey and eventually decided to hunt for something else nearby. In the meantime, she snagged a valuable item from the wolves. She hands Zhang a gem, saying it's something unique. He identifies it as a wind gem. Chu Chang compliments his sharp eye, saying this gem can enable someone to summon wind blades and storms. As Zhang holds the gem, he begins to hear multiple voices. He realizes it's indeed a new ability, similar to what happened with his fire devourer skill, and thinks the contract gem might work with a delay. He hears two celestial foxes talking. One says there are two humans inside the shop, one of whom caused trouble for their highness back at the academy dormitory. The foxes plan to turn them into food, and Zhang realizes they are being hunted. Meanwhile, Leu Sizzy is at home taking a bath. After stepping out, she notices her talisman vibrating. She immediately understands this is bad news. It means Zhang Ping is in danger. Back at the shop, Zhang activates the talisman and waits for Leu Sizzy to appear. But the celestial foxes are growing impatient and might invade at any moment. Chu Chang asks if he's okay, noticing his change in demeanor. However, Zhang sees two mid-level foxes preparing to attack. He doesn't tell Chu Chang just yet, instead suggesting she go chat with her uncle. Meanwhile, he claims he's heading to a convenience store for supplies. Chu Chang agrees and tells him to hurry back, but insists on keeping the wind gem. Zhang now realizes he must get Wang out of there as quickly as possible and can't let her get caught in this mess. In the backyard of the blacksmith shop, Wang continues practicing. Zhang approaches, takes her hand, and tells her to follow him quietly, even though she doesn't fully understand what's happening. But the foxes appear and ask where they're planning to go. Wang Jimin, unable to see through their illusions, perceives them as her parents. However, the protagonist firmly tells her not to approach them. The girl insists that these are her parents and that everything is fine. The foxes, disguised as her parents, ask her who this young man is, who seems terrified of them. She replies that the protagonist is a friend from her martial school. Then the protagonist is attacked by the foxes but manages to dodge. The foxes don't want to let them escape. Wang doesn't understand anything while the protagonist tries to calm her down, saying that everything will be okay. He firmly holds the girl, keeping her safe. However, the enemies manage to break through his protective barrier until they are hit. After getting up from the ground, Wang asks if the protagonist is okay. He replies that he is. Soon after, she tries to question her parents but still doesn't see them for what they truly are. However, unlike her, the protagonist commands the mutant beasts not to come any closer. The foxes quickly realize that he can see through their disguises. They say this is another reason not to let him leave alive. They attack swiftly and the protagonist fails to dodge, wondering if this is due to the difference in their levels. After this, he notices that another fox is heading toward Wang. Seeing the girl completely vulnerable and himself unable to do anything, Sizzy appears and helps them. Using her ice powers, she drives the foxes away. Wang tries to tell her not to do that. However, she still doesn't know what's really happening. Leu Sizzy, after finishing, asks if they are okay. But Wang is still in shock and asks why she killed her parents. Zhang tells her the truth, explaining about the foxes and their disguises. She starts crying, unable to believe it's true, as she believes those were her parents. Zhang asks why they aren't revealing their true forms. Leu Sizzy says the evidence suggests the presence of a king-level celestial fox within the city. She is capable of amplifying the illusions of the entire clan. This means that even the illusions of low-level celestial foxes can fool an awakened one, and those killed earlier only reveal their true forms outside the city. Zhang realizes he might be the only one able to see through the illusions, so he tells Wang that these monsters killed her parents and took their place. Then he removes the creatures' masks and makes the girl see the truth. This, however, only worsens her situation as she now becomes even sadder. Elsewhere, Lu Xiu says that 9 foxes have died in a single week, and it seems the humans have found a way to deal with their illusions. One of the servants asks why they don't just annihilate the entire city, but another quickly responds saying that this would destroy their food supply. The queen orders everyone to be silent and says that annihilating all humans is inefficient. Besides being a waste of food, her top priority is to lure out those lurking in the shadows and then eliminate them. She asks if the vice president has any suggestions. He tells Her Majesty that it might be time to bring other species into the city and reduce the herd. The queen asks if he is sure the enemies are in the city. The vice president says there are 3 major organizations. The city lord was severely injured and fled, probably hiding and still within the city. awaiting his return. A fox says that bringing other species is a good idea to diversify the menu. The queen agrees but reminds them that the king still rests. She also warns the human that although he has gained her trust, if he makes a single mistake, she will not hesitate to end him. Huan Ziming says that as a humble servant, he has dedicated his life to serving Pearl City, but it's a shame that the former city lord was incompetent. Thus, the city stagnated under weak leadership, and he only wishes for the city to be ruled by the strongest. Back with Wang Jimin, she is still lamenting her parents, and she is still in disbelief about the truth she heard. She weeps bitterly over the situation, claiming that if she had known earlier, she would have done something. Sissy says that even if she had known, she couldn't have done much, but the protagonist tells her not to say that. Wang is completely frustrated, claiming it's all her fault for being too weak and unable to master a simple martial technique. Then she asks why this had to happen to her parents and why it wasn't her who died in their place. However, Zhang gives the girl a tight hug and tries to comfort her, saying none of this is her fault. He says that he also lost someone important, who was killed by celestial foxes within the municipal guard, and he still thinks about her every day, asking if this tragedy could have been avoided if he had stopped her from joining the municipal guard. But deep down, he knows that even if he could go back in time, the outcome would still be the same. Joining the municipal guard was her dream, and no one could have stopped her from doing it. Zhang says they can't change what is destined to happen and affirms that her parents' death wasn't her fault, but they can fight for a better future. They can become stronger and protect those they love, and he is certain her parents are looking at her with pride wherever they may be. As for those scoundrels inside the city, Zhang promises to get rid of them all but ends up passing out shortly after due to his battle wounds. He had commanded his body to hold on, but he didn't expect it to last so little. After waking up, his friends feel relieved. Zhang asks how long he was unconscious, and Sizzy tells him to be careful and not move too much, or his wound might reopen. Immediately, Wang says she has decided to become stronger, and when that happens, she will help him exterminate all the celestial foxes. The protagonist says he believes in her potential and knows she will be able to do it. Sizzy tells Wang that her home is no longer safe, and that it's better for her to stay there temporarily. This way, it will be easier to keep both of them safe. Soon after, the protagonist overhears some foxes talking again and recognizes that one of them is Liu Xiu. He then tells Sizzy that he has a lead on the celestial foxes. She asks what it is. Moments later, she learns that Huang Ziming, the vice mayor, appeared in a conversation with the Fox Queen and called himself a humble servant, revealing himself as a traitor. And this king he mentioned might be the one amplifying the illusions strong enough to deceive even high-level awakened ones. If their king is out of action, this might be the chance to counterattack. She says she needs Zhang's help to identify them. He agrees. Meanwhile, Chu Kang's uncle says he is hungry, and she tells him to hold on a little longer because Zhang should be coming back from the convenience store. At the Purifier Squad's base, some girls talk about the order to activate the secret room and about creating a celestial veil. Manny says she thinks Sizzy is the one in charge there. Ken Lui agrees with her. Suji asks if Manny wants some coffee, as this might take a while, but she replies that she's fine and has already had some. Then she says they can start now. Soon Suji invokes a full solar charge. Manny, alongside her, invokes the Black Veil, and Chen Luowei invokes the full distortion of light and shadow. Thus, an illusion called the Celestial Veil is created over the entire Pearl City. After working with them for a while, the Purifier Squad decided to share some of their secrets with Zhang. They are a secret organization within Pearl City, and they swore to defend the city from any threat, purifying into all corruption. As a secret weapon, they often carry out covert operations. A dedicated division known as the Barrier Team supports these missions. They have 3 main members. The leader, Manny, whose ability is the Black Veil. There's also Xuji. Her ability is Solar Charge. She absorbs sunlight and channels it into her companions, keeping them strengthened for prolonged battles. Finally, Chen Luowei, with the ability to distort light, can manipulate light and shadow. Together, the 3 can create the Celestial Veil illusion of light, which makes anyone enter an illusory dimension within its range capable of reshaping the entire setting to confuse opponents. Later, 2 foxes discuss capturing humans for food. However, one of them says the city has been on alert, making it dangerous. The other one thinks her friend is scared, until her friend starts to feel something strange but is called paranoid. Then the other one also begins to feel it, and wonders where all the humans went. After that, someone attacks them with a punch, trying to catch the 2 foxes off guard, and creating a massive explosion on impact. But the man couldn't kill him with the punch. Upon seeing him, one of the foxes says he is the one responsible for killing their sisters in the city, and asks if he isn't afraid they'll call reinforcements. His codename is Golden Blood, and he says he'll be waiting for the reinforcements to show up. According to the information he has, these foxes are around level 25, and he imagines he can handle them since he is at level 32. They don't stand still and attack him. Jinbo hears from one of the foxes that he is nothing more than food for them. However, he realizes he is injured but doesn't understand why since he was certain he blocked the attack. With that, one of the foxes asks where all of his arrogance went. She also asks if this is all he's got, not understanding how the others died so easily. But then she takes a strong punch, and Jinbo says that now he understands. The other fox says he will pay for that. This way, Jin observes his opponent more closely and says that while he might not see her true form, he has figured out her height. This ability is strong for stealth attacks, but in direct combat, the fox poses no threat. Trapped, she calls for her friend's help. Thus, Jin prepares himself and throws one fox at the other. After that, he jumps and prepares to attack with an aerial kick, intending to kill him with a single blow. After falling, one of the foxes wonders why she can't feel her siblings and how she fell into this trap. Then Jin attacks them again. As he continues attacking, they plead for mercy. From a distance, Zhang and Sizzy watch the fight and see Jin as someone incredibly strong. Sizzy says he is the leader of her combat division, and it's no wonder why. Back in the real world, Shadball calls Sizzy, saying there are problems with mutants piling up outside the city, and they seem agitated for some reason. If they invade the city now, they'll overload the illusion. Sizzy must analyze the situation and take the protagonist along to help. As for those foxes, Zhang marked they are already on the radar and a combat team will be sent to deal with them. Then Sizzy tells Zhang they need to go and instructs someone to keep an eye on the blacksmith's shop. After the mission, she'll introduce him to her boss, who was on the phone earlier. Leaving the city, Zhang says it's been a long time since he last did this, and he ends up seeing plants different from the ones he knows. But as he approaches them, Sizzy warns him to be careful. Soon he sees that one of the plants spits something. Sizzy explains that these are called hydrochloric acid grass, something highly corrosive. This is the fruit ripening season, and the ripened ones explode like fireworks. The hydrochloric acid grass spreads its seeds this way, so he should watch where he steps, as there are mutant beasts that feed on these plants. Zhang should consider this his first opponent, since she will investigate the mutant beast uprising, and you shouldn't go too far. Next, the protagonist observes a rabbit and notices that it seems harmless, but has a higher level than the armored rat. So he decides to take advantage of the rabbit being distracted and attack first. He throws his blade at the animal. However, the rabbit manages to escape. The protagonist, with his pearl fist, tries to hit it, but the rabbit manages to shoot a corrosive substance from a distance. Not only that, but the grass was also triggered. Zhang dodges the acid and thinks he needs to analyze the situation while his body goes on autopilot. This rabbit has incredible reflexes and senses, and the protagonist's surprise attack was useless against it. The enemy is also capable of ranged attacks and is immune to the acid. It spreads the acid to prevent its opponent from getting close, then lures him toward the ripened fruits. Zhang concludes that the rabbit is fast, smart, and deadly. Defeating it won't be easy. However, he notices that even though he was hit by the acid, he wasn't burned and finds it strange since he defended himself with bare hands and still wasn't injured. Then he figures it must have been because of his flames. After that, the rabbit attacks by shooting softballs, and the protagonist defends himself with fire. Now he realizes that the acid doesn't penetrate fire, it evaporates when exposed to flames. Zhang thinks this is why Sizzy let him face this rabbit despite it being above his level. Then, the rabbit transforms into something more aggressive, making the protagonist feel a familiar sensation as he can confirm that even low-level mutant beasts have a second phase. The rabbit no longer attacks from a distance. This time, it tries close-range attacks. Because of this, Zhang ends up getting hurt, as the mutant beast's claws are also coated with acid. At least he understands that the enemy won't attack from a distance anymore since it realized it wouldn't work on him. But now, he will have to be even more cautious. Then he uses his fire devourer ability and flame reserves as he needs to keep his entire body engulfed in flames to avoid being melted. However, he is burning through his reserves too quickly and needs to finish this fast. Zhang decides to surround the rabbit with his flames. He then asks the rabbit if it thinks it's the only one that can set traps, claiming that now it has nowhere to run. With the rabbit surrounded, the protagonist attempts a charge with his dagger. But once again, the rabbit manages to dodge. However, Zhang says that's exactly what he wanted. He then activates the fire devourer to absorb the flames, and he wants to see if the rabbit can dodge in midair. This way, he fires his flames at the enemy, hitting it directly. The rabbit falls to the ground, covered in fire. Zhang's attributes haven't increased, which means the enemy is still alive, and he needs to finish it off. As expected from a level 9 beast, defeating it grants Zhang 2 points in all his attributes, but his level still hasn't increased. The higher the level, the harder it becomes to reach the next one. That's why it's common to see attribute increases from training and defeating monsters, even without leveling up. However, the protagonist's fire devourer ability leveled up. This small excursion is turning out better than he imagined. But what he didn't anticipate was a legion of angry rabbits showing up to confront him, leaving Zhang quite shocked. Looking at his flame reserves, Zhang realizes they are nearly empty. Not only that, but there are more rabbits than he can handle. These rabbits are furious, so he figures this might be enough to activate his pendant, claiming that knowing when to retreat is also a form of bravery. With the pendant active, he calls for Sizzy's help. He doesn't stop running but ends up cornered. The rabbits orchestrated their attack to this point. Now he is at a loss for what to do. With no choice, he concludes he'll have to endure the first wave of attacks. But before he is hit, an ice barrier protects him. Zhang sees this ability and assumes it can only belong to Sizzy. She appears and tells Zhang to fall back. She also says the caustic rabbits are out of control. Then she turns the ice into water and attacks the rabbits with a tsunami. Once they are all submerged, Sizzy freezes the water again, defeating them. Zhang finds this incredible since he could barely take down one rabbit, giving it his all, but his friend wiped out all of them in a single attack. Afterward, she says she just stepped away for a bit and asks where they all came from. Zhang doesn't know how to answer. Soon after, she sees more rabbits, saying the battle isn't over yet. Even so, she claims their numbers don't matter because the outcome will be the same. However, they don't attack. Sissy wonders if it's because of the alpha, but assumes it should already be dead. She notes that they never pay attention to what's happening around them, as if they are entirely focused on something. In this case, she won't hold back, so she kills every last one of the rabbits. Upon capturing the alpha, she says the answer must be somewhere inside its body. She unfreezes it, but shatters the body into pieces. However, amidst the shards of ice, she finds what she was looking for, the spiritual control pill. Zhang asks what it is. Sissy explains that it's a pill made by some organization to control mutant beasts. Only tamers from the Zhu clan can make these, indicating they finally decided to act. The pills emit a unique scent that only mid- and low-level mutant beasts can detect. This scent attracts them, making them crave it. This is very different from a contract gem. Beasts that consume the pill lose all sanity, becoming entirely subservient to whoever controls the pill. But how the Zhu clan controls these beasts remains a mystery. The pill isn't digested, so Sizzy says that if left there, more beasts could end up becoming puppets. And she's sure there's a connection between these pills and the beast rampages. She'll have to report this to HQ whether or not the Zhu clan is responsible. Before the investigation ends, she says Zhang will be training there with her. The protagonist agrees. Meanwhile, a mysterious presence watches them. Soon after, Sizzy attacks. The protagonist asks if she saw something. The presence is no longer there. Sizzy says it was nothing and wonders if it was just her imagination or not. A week later, the queen gathers all the foxes living nearby. At her operations center, she thinks that mutant beasts are attacking more frequently and wonders if Huang Ziming is responsible. But that doesn't matter now because she doesn't want to rely on him anymore. Now is the time to make her big move, as the foxes already know the humans have discovered them. The humans are breaking free from mental control, causing severe damage to the foxes. Last week, it was observed that some of them were defeated on Craftsman Street. Soon, those still residing there will be the next targets, and the queen needs them to keep the humans' attention focused there so she can act elsewhere. If the humans think the foxes are fleeing, they can use that to their advantage and force them to act rashly, as the queen wants to know exactly who they're dealing with. Back in the rabbit forest, the protagonist attacks those around him, using his Nightwalker ability. After a long week of hunting rabbits, he finally reached level 6. Not only that, but he completely mastered their attack patterns and weaknesses. First, he neutralizes the enemy's acid attacks with fire. Once enraged, they drench themselves in acid and attack at close range. The acid is flammable, but burns quickly before it can be lethal. Zhang learned to use scarlet snake scales as fuel. This increases the efficiency of his flames, allowing him to burn as much as he needs. This made it easier to deal with these rabbits. He spent a good amount of time collecting scarlet snake scales and ended up using all of them at this moment, but he thinks it was worth it. Because with all these rabbits dead, he imagines it will be enough to level up. After self-assessment, he confirms it worked, as his system window shows he received a significant upgrade. He thought it was tied to his level, but even after reaching level 6, nothing happened. The contract gem remained at level 4, so it's not about his level. The contract gem is simply harder to level up. He hopes the next unlocked power will be something combat-related. However, while Zhang is calm, one of the rabbits' bodies starts moving. He is surprised that one survived, but he isn't worried, claiming that even if this enemy attacks with everything, he still has plenty of fire left to use. So he moves in for the attack, and doesn't flinch in the face of the enemy. However, when he tries to strike it, his hand holding the dagger passes through the rabbit. This surprises him, as he didn't expect dead rabbits to return as wild spirits. Nevertheless, whether it's a ghost, demon, vengeful spirit, or anything else, he will kill it all the same. And so he does, banishing the spirit inhabiting the rabbit's body. Honestly, the protagonist didn't expect rabbits like these to know how to use such a technique. He wonders if this is another result of the control pills. After checking the rabbit's stomach, he finds something quite strange, which doesn't resemble one of the pills. He tries to analyze it but fails. This intrigues him because Zhang hasn't encountered something resistant to his analysis for a while. The protagonist spends some time studying the strange object to uncover its nature. Finally, the analysis succeeds. Then he has a vision of a beastly spirit that possessed one of the forest animals. This animal attacked other beastly creatures without any apparent reason. Several mutant beasts banded together against the possessed animal, yet they couldn't defeat it. The possessed animal was stronger than them. Moreover, the spirit rapidly consumed the possessed animal's body, forcing it to switch hosts. This orb is truly rare, but Zhang still doesn't know its origin. Direct contact didn't work. Unlike his last awakening, he doubts whether he should swallow this thing. It came from a black pit, something he already understands as dangerous. But remembering the battles against the foxes, and how difficult some of them were, the protagonist calls himself an insignificant insect. He claims he has no choice but to swallow the orb. So without a second thought, he does. Immediately, Zhang begins to feel the effects. He even screams in pain. His emotions overwhelm him, to the point that Zhang recalls the worst moments of his life, including his last meeting with his friend Su Jingo, where he promised to see her again. Angrily, he tells his friend not to worry because he won't die yet, not before killing the last of the cursed foxes roaming Pearl City. The protagonist's stats evolve absurdly, with his combat focus becoming both offensive and defensive at the same time. Not only that, but his potential is tripled in size due to the power he gained. Zhang begins to cry shortly after, and he wonders why. He doesn't know the reasons, only thinking that soon he will have enough strength to avenge his friend. Some travelers approach, and one of them asks if the protagonist is okay, but his friend says not to bother him since it's none of their business. One of them also mentions that they need to hurry to reach the city before being attacked by any mutant beast. Then the protagonist gets up, saying he's fine. But his new appearance frightens the travelers, and they run away. The man's fear is converted into power for Zhang, and he realizes this isn't normal, as it doesn't even register as energy. However, he can shape it however he wants, even into a blade if necessary. Soon he wonders how powerful this could be. Next, he decides to test this new ability. Zhang notices that he hasn't even started, but he already feels stronger. He strikes the same weapon multiple times, and easily slices it into cubes with the utmost ease. With that, he concludes this power is quite versatile, in addition to giving him a significant advantage in fighting mutant beasts. Leu Sizzy appears running toward the protagonist, and Zhang doesn't understand why. She ran there because she thought a mutant beast was attacking him. Zhang thinks this reminds him of the blacksmith shopkeeper. Then he explains that nothing serious is happening until Sizzy asks if the dark essence is coming from him and if he has a death wish. She says that by consuming something unknown, it's as if he's trying to walk through death's door. Zhang says it shouldn't be that bad since he analyzed it, and if there were any problems, he could always command himself to vomit the harmful content. Sizzy asks what he would do if that plan didn't work, or even worse, if he ingested a parasite. Hearing this, Zhang asks what she's talking about and if what he ate is dangerous. She explains that dark creatures are of unknown origin. They have no specific form and reside in other creatures. Both the black goat and the rabbit he mentioned were probably being controlled by dark beasts. When they die, the dark entity hides in their bodies, waiting for a new host. The key point is that dark beasts can control their hosts, which makes the protagonist feel desperate upon hearing it. He imagines that the strange pain he feels could mean the essence is trying to escape his body, but since he feels fine, it might mean it failed. Stussy isn't sure because Zhang is unique. Perhaps he has some other type of creature residing inside him, something that fought and eliminated the beast. Or maybe it's because he can exercise absolute control over himself, so he isn't affected even if there's a parasite. But if he mutates, she declares she'll have to cut him open to remove it. Zhang apologizes for the trouble. However, suddenly, a spider appears, and it leaves Sizzy utterly terrified. This shifts her from a threatening stance to one of fear, leaving the protagonist utterly confused since just a moment ago she was threatening to cut him open. Then Sizzy even hugs him in fear, begging him to chase the spider away. Zhang comforts her and thinks that, in this state, she looks like a frightened child. He quickly recalls a time when they were younger. Once he caught an insect and tried to show it to her, but scared, Sizzy caused the insect to escape from his hand and then ran away. Zhang lamented the escape of his new friend, but the girl told him there were plenty of people at the orphanage for him to befriend and that he did meet an insect. The protagonist, however, said he would leave the orphanage someday and move away from those people. But at the time, Sizzy promised him that no matter what happened in the future, they would remain friends. The young Zhang declared that promises are unbreakable and that she couldn't go back on her word. Back in the present, he feels welcomed by her once more and tries to return the favor. Embarrassed, Sizzy pulls away, realizing they've been hugging for too long, and tells him never to approach anything dangerous without knowing what he's doing. She reminds him that there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Even though he got lucky this time, no one can predict what might happen in the future. To conclude, she tells the protagonist never to forget this. Zhang thought that Sizzy had become cold after joining the squad, but seeing her now, he realizes she's still the same girl he remembers, even though she hides it. Then his medallion begins emitting an alert. Sizzy receives a call from headquarters. She tells Zhang that his training is over and they need to return to the city because the team leader is injured after facing a celestial fox and they need to provide support. Zhang asks why the leader doesn't retreat or request support from the nearest team. Sizzy replies that they can't take more risks and things outside the walls are complicated. Sizzy explains that no one knows how it started, but since the cataclysm, mutant beasts have been appearing, and that's why walls were built around the city. It's dangerous to leave the city. According to investigations, the area outside the city is surrounded by dangerous creatures, making exploration difficult, especially in the ocean. Upon returning to the city, Sizzy asks about the situation, and the person in charge explains that they've been using the illusion barrier to monitor everything and have reduced the fox's activity. Some low-level foxes confronted them on Craftsman Street, but they realized it was a trap. The leader was ambushed and injured there. Now Sizzy needs to take over as team leader in place of Jinbo and ensure the city's safety. The protagonist offers to help, but Sizzy declines and tells him to return to the shop while she works. Zhang agrees and wishes her luck. He thinks he'll finally have some time to rest after days of exhaustive training outside the city. He also wonders how Wang Jimin's training is going, but then he becomes alarmed. He notices the people aren't moving, until a man approaches and Zhang analyzes him, noticing he's the only one moving. The man says Zhang will never reach his status and questions who he is to analyze him like that, claiming there aren't many with that ability around. He explains that a high-level awakened analyzer can only use their ability less than 10 times a day, but Zhang doesn't have such limitations, which leaves Zhang wondering how he knows this. The protagonist asks if the man needs help with something, thinking he must be incredibly strong. The old man then asks if Zhang can help him have a little fun. Zhang concludes this means trouble, and the man asks if he's going to make a move. The protagonist replies that he has no reason to fight him, but the old man questions if he needs a reason to become stronger. He also asks how Zhang plans to avenge his friend if all he knows how to do is talk. Furious, Zhang challenges the man to repeat that and attacks him. But the opponent disappears in front of him, leaving Zhang utterly confused. Zhang thinks the man must have a teleportation ability and moved elsewhere. So Zhang attacks where he assumes the man is, but the opponent stops his strike. He tells Zhang he needs to improve his speed. However, Zhang has a trick up his sleeve. Using fire, he attacks his opponent, but the old man defends himself by becoming intangible. He says Zhang hasn't entertained him enough and now it's his turn to attack. Zhang notices the man conjured an aura as a distraction and also wields water element abilities. He dodges the attacks, wondering how many abilities this opponent has, even comparing him to a monster. With that, Zhang decides to use his new abilities, seeing that he has no choice but to fight with everything he has. First, he conjures a shield with his dark conjuration ability to create an opening for an attack. This gives him the opportunity to use his concealment ability for a stealth attack. The old man says that was clever, but it's still not enough. Dong then realizes it wasn't very effective, and soon after he is counterattacked. Afterward, he is thrown far away. His opponent comments that having such power at his current level is impressive. Zhang then notices the old man also has telekinesis and concludes that he's completely overpowered. Now that Zhang is down, the old man says he wants to have a conversation. Zhang thinks the old man went through all this trouble just to test him. His power is on a completely different level compared to Jinbo and Sizzy. The only person in this city with such strength is the squad captain, so Zhang agrees to talk. The old man asks if Zhang is playing shy now. He also says names should be used and tells Zhang to call him whenever he wants if he's forgotten his name. With that, the protagonist thinks that the Purge Squad has already discovered everything about him but wonders why Seru Shibai would reveal himself like this and what his purpose is. Next, Shibai tells the protagonist not to think too much before learning to prevent others from reading his mind, leaving Zhang stunned. He also says that in the 2 centuries since he arrived, he's never seen an unlimited ability user until now. How could my curiosity not have been awakened? The protagonist did not know he had unlimited power, as he thought the apex level was the highest awakened being could reach, the same applying to abilities. Seru Shibai says that no matter how powerful a awakened being becomes, they are bound to a single ability for life, but unlimited awakened beings can break this barrier. Not only that, but they can also remove the limit of abilities and learn new ones. That's why the old man became curious about Zhang and desires to copy this ability from him. The old man says he isn't questioning the protagonist without reason. Regardless of the outcome, he intends to reward him and answer all his questions. Zhang asks if he can refuse. Shibai says yes, but suggests the protagonist might want to see his gift first. The old man then reveals a bracelet. He explains that this golden treasure is equipment he used himself and that it contains a storage ability, which he hopes Zhang understands the significance of. The protagonist comments that Seru Shibai is being very generous and thinks he must obtain this item as it's precisely what he had in mind. Thus, the old man tells Zhang to hold his hand. At the moment he does so, Seru Shibai focuses on trying to copy the protagonist's ability in exchange for the item. It didn't take long before he completed the process. Zhang asks if that's all. The old man confirms it is. He says he couldn't copy his ability, something unprecedented in his life as he had previously encountered various abilities and managed to copy them all. This makes the protagonist someone truly special, and even though he couldn't copy the ability, the old man, as promised, gives him the item. However, as soon as Zhang touches the bracelet and analyzes it, he becomes terrified, because he has a vision of how the old man once possessed the bracelet. Living people were used to craft special items, an act the protagonist judges as extremely cruel. He then asks Seru Shibai if this is true. The old man replies that 2 centuries ago, criminal organizations indeed sacrificed people in this manner. Originally, the old man tried to destroy the bracelet, but perhaps in the protagonist's hands, it could bring justice to the souls who perished giving their lives to these blood jewels. Zhang asks what the city must have been like at that time, imagining that if people were killed so casually, what other horrors might have occurred. The old man says he is not entirely wrong. For 2,000 years ago, the mutant beasts of the Zhu family ruled Pearl City with an iron fist. All the inhabitants were their slaves with no future or hope for those people. They worked day and night without breaks for food or even the restroom. Women were selected by this family to be sex slaves and became toys in the hands of the powerful. From birth, children were brainwashed and forced to betray their families, receiving work tools as their reward. As adults, those who could no longer work were used as food for the Zhu family's mutant beasts, and no one had awakened abilities. They were eternal slaves, turned into sacrifices and fuel for crafting equipment. Because of the Zhu family and their countless crimes, some capable individuals silently gathered forces and eventually overthrew the Zhu family's rule. The protagonist caught a glimpse of all this, and the old man asks if he has any further questions. Zhang asks the old man, given his strength and power, why he didn't try to deal with the princess personally and free the city once and for all. Saidu Shibai replies that it's not so simple. It may seem that Pearl City's defenses are weak and that they were caught completely off guard by the foxes, but the city's defenses are robust, and the investigation team has been quietly attracting and eliminating mutant beasts. The Purge Squad is near the city gate, secretly dealing with mutant beasts, and then there's the King's divine artifact, the Sun and Moon Pearl, inside the city itself. Within the Sun and Moon Pearl, all living beings are suppressed and their power is limited to level 40. Even if a king-level beast invades, its power will be reduced. The old man is the greatest apex force that exists, but given how things are going, it may not be enough. Zhang asks if the old man is saying there's a traitor among them. Saidu Shibai says that within the city, including himself, the only one capable of controlling the artifact is the remnant of the Zhu family, who have been hiding in the shadows since their fall. Zhang asks if after the Zhu family's downfall, they were the ones responsible for opening the gates for the foxes, as that would explain the activity of mutant beasts in the city. He then asks why the old man didn't deal with them when he had the chance. Saidu Shibai says he tried, but evil had taken root in the city after a millennial dynasty ruled it. With this, the protagonist learns more about his enemy but still doesn't understand their real objectives and wonders why they incited a revolt among the mutant beasts. Even without all the answers, Saidu Shibai acts with extreme caution, knowing that if he falls into the enemy's trap, the city will be in serious trouble. In the protagonist's past life, nuclear weapons were only used in critical moments. Even though Princess Yu continues provoking and killing, anyone could act impulsively, except for Saidu Shibai. The old man tells Zhang he cannot copy his abilities, which is why he needs his help against the forces of evil. He invites him to join the Purgatory Squad. After hearing everything the old man said, the protagonist accepts the proposal, as he is now more motivated than ever to act against their common enemy. At the blacksmith's shop, Wang Jimin asks if the shop owner can't repair the equipment later. However, the owner says she is just trying to make the most of her time. Wang says it's been a few days since the protagonist left and wonders when he will return. Xu Shang tells her not to worry, as he knows Zhang can take care of himself. Wang says she just wants someone to guide her in her training, and also hopes that Zhang isn't in any danger. The shop owner teases Wang, saying she sounds like the protagonist's wife, worrying about him like that and waiting for him every day. After leaving the girl embarrassed, she stops teasing and says that areas outside the city, like villages and caves, are being marked. By mutant beasts, of course. As long as Zhang doesn't enter those areas, he'll be safe. Wang asks if there are villages outside the city. Kang replies that yes, several of them are isolated due to pure prejudice, while others currently worship mutant beasts as deities. He also says that if she ever crosses one of those places and encounters someone, she should just continue her path. Otherwise, she might be captured and turned into a slave or sacrifice. Wang asks if there's no way to communicate with those people. Xu Chang says they can't be considered human anymore because in those places, the mutant beasts are the least dangerous thing. Some can move stealthily and use masks to avoid detection. As a result, their targets don't even notice them approaching. At that moment, Wang sees a sinister aura approaching and asks if that's what Xu Chang is referring to. The shop owner sees the creature and says it's practically that. Then she feels a chill. However, it turns out to be the masked protagonist laying a prank on the girls. Xu Chang immediately hits him below the belt. Even so, she gets scared because she didn't recognize him. Zhang tries to act naturally and says what she did was mean. Xu Chang asks who he is. The protagonist then decides to take off his mask and reveal the joke, something the two girls did not find funny at all. The shop owner says he must be going crazy, showing up like that and scaring them. Zhang says he overheard their conversation and wanted to seize the opportunity. He just didn't expect to get kicked like that. She asks if Zhang has finished his training. He says yes, and now that he's back in the city, he plans to put what he learned into practice. Xu Chang says that's perfect because she found a lead about Shangshan, and she plans to leave the city alone. She then asks the protagonist to take care of her uncle. Zhang asks why the rush. She simply says someone was waiting for his return and she doesn't want to interfere with whatever is about to happen, leaving Wang extremely embarrassed. After that, the girl just says she's going to her room and staying there for the rest of the night. But before leaving him alone, she turns around and tells the protagonist that she's glad he came back safely. This makes Zhang think that for the first time since he arrived in this world, he feels at home. The uncle suddenly appears, saying the girl left a while ago and asks why the protagonist is still smiling. He then tells Zhang the first thing he should do in the morning is find Xu Chang, and tell her the uncle is sick because he doesn't want her to leave the city. Zhang is confused, but the uncle says he is not senile and certainly not truly sick. He just doesn't want his niece to leave the city. The protagonist says that Shanshan's whereabouts have been unknown for some time and finding something about it is exciting. That's why Chu Chang wants to leave. After that, the uncle says he knows his niece's strength very well. She wants to investigate Shanshan's whereabouts, but she might also encounter misfortune. Liu states that he'll play dumb to prevent her from taking risks because the girl is deeply loyal. Once her heart is set on someone or something, she becomes even more cautious and will not easily take risks. With that, Zhang says he appreciates what Uncle Liu is doing. The uncle says Zhang has a real talent for forging, but Chu Chang is not a good teacher and honestly was never passionate about forging. There are many gaps in her knowledge. So in the coming days, he will teach Zhang the real forging and molding technique. While it may not be a great secret, it is still a unique skill of the Liu family. So Zhang should pay attention, something he assures he will do. Later, the protagonist hears someone calling his name, until he sees the spirit of Su Jingo, telling him to keep going because she'll be waiting for him. Soon, the protagonist wonders if this is truly his childhood friend. After talking to the uncle, Chu Chang agreed to stay in the city, and as promised, Liu began teaching the protagonist the real forging technique. Zhang combined his dark abilities with this technique. In doing so, he gained better control over shapes and precision in his creations. Wang improved her training and learned new styles, including the Monkey King style. On the night, the protagonist heard the voice of his deceased friend. He decided to contact the Purgatory Squad to clear up some doubts. He asked the captain if he was sure the foxes couldn't be disguised as humans around the blacksmith district, since he heard something unusual. The captain responded that he had ensured the area was cleared and there were no foxes around. Zhang thinks that if it wasn't the whispering wind that brought that sound to him, it might mean Su Jingo isn't dead. If she's still out there for revenge and answers, he will unmask that celestial fox disguised as his friend. 3 days after this event, in the women's dormitory at school, a man in disguise sneaks into one of the girls' rooms. As he approaches her, he declares that his little drug has left the girl in the state he wanted. It is said that the daughter of the Su family is quite beautiful, and this depraved man wanted to confirm it for himself. He even goes so far as to remove the sheet covering her and touch her skin to satisfy his carnal desires, until a dark aura approaches and calls out to him. Frightened, the man asks who is there. In a menacing tone, the dark voice threatens him, and the man, who had been confident until now, feels his legs tremble with fear. He tries to get the voice to reveal itself and stop lurking in the shadows. But when he least expects it, the shadow appears behind him. Terrified, the pervert runs in desperation. He thinks he should have drugged the entire family instead of just the girl. But he doesn't know if he's being pursued by humans or ghosts. In the middle of the chase, he is struck in the leg and falls to the ground shortly after. The pervert's fear only grows when the dark figure asks if he still wants to continue fighting. Terrified, the man begs the shadow to stay away. Seeing the man wet himself in fear, the shadow says he thought serial killers would be tougher to face, but this one was easily dealt with. He removes the mask and reveals himself to be the protagonist, who has completed his first official mission and now must report his findings to the headquarters. After this, he analyzes the fallen serial killer and sees that the man had potential but used his strength for evil, becoming a complete loser. However, by seeing his memories, the protagonist understands the horror the man's victims went through, because he drugged the women he targeted and approached them when they were defenseless, caring neither about their age nor their vulnerabilities. He even attacked a young girl in front of her mother. All of this while the young girl begged for help, and the man showed no remorse. The number of his victims is large, and he saw them only as toys, puppets to serve his perverse desires. Upon seeing all of this, Zhang is horrified. Shortly after, the serial killer wakes up and tries to attack the protagonist. Without his disguise, the man sees Zhang's clean face and remarks that he's just a kid who interrupted his fun, even attempting to drug him to escape. However, it has no effect as Zhang tells the man that he's already as good as dead. Seeing that his drug doesn't work, the vile man panics again. Before he can react, Zhang cuts off his hand. The depraved man screams in pain. Zhang says that this is for the mother who gave her life trying to protect her daughter. Then he says the next strike is for the young girl who preferred death over submitting to a vile man like him. The following strike is dedicated to the heroism of the municipal guards. Zhang attacks again, saying this one is for that righteous detective, hoping to honor the memory of the nameless wakened individual who fought for justice with all his soul. After being beaten thoroughly, the vile man dares to call the protagonist insane. But Zhang tells him that with today's technology, he could survive and be treated properly in full care, so he still has a chance. As long as he can reach the exit door, his life will be spared. However, Zhang thinks that, in reality, he will make this coward experience the same despair and terror he inflicted on all those innocent people, but 100 times worse. The protagonist lets the man believe he has a chance, even giving him a glimmer of hope. The vile man starts thinking he can stay alive and even begins plotting his revenge against Zhang, imagining how he'll hurt him to pay back what he's just suffered. He tells himself he cannot die yet, believing there are still things to do and people he wants to visit. As he nears the door, he starts declaring victory, thinking he just needs to open and cross through the door to escape. But as he reaches it, he finds he cannot open the door. He starts panicking, banging on the door to try to force it open. Zhang approaches and tells him that he's in no condition to do that. Soon, the vile man realizes he's lost his chance to escape punishment and will now face the consequences. The protagonist does not hold back, ensuring the man receives everything he deserves. After finishing the job, Zhang Yun gains a boost to his status. He thought that eliminating the celestial foxes would be enough to bring peace back to Pearl City and save everyone. But he now questions whether someone like this man deserves saving. Trash like him deserves to die or suffer something even worse, like living with a bleeding heart. Afterward, Zhang starts hearing voices again that mention something about Manhua Academy and say that today is the right opportunity. Zhang doesn't fully understand what this means. He immediately uses his communicator to inform the captain that he has dealt with a serial killer. But he also mentions that he picked up something else with his whisper of the wind. There's a disturbance at Manhua Academy, and it seems they're planning to kidnap someone. At the Purgatory Squad headquarters, the captain hears everything. The sensory officer says she cannot sense the situation at the mentioned location because a barrier is blocking her, but she is certain something is wrong there. The captain then orders Zhang to report the situation in real time and says he will send someone to accompany him on this new mission. However, he warns Zhang not to engage until reinforcements arrive. At Manhua Academy, a barrier surrounds the area for protection. Inside, hooded figures move around. One of them mentions that they've been searching for 15 minutes with no success and questions what Chen Xuling wants with this girl. Another team member says they sense someone crossing the barrier they set up. The most timid of the group becomes worried, but the leader tells him to stay calm, reassuring him that their lanterns provide double protection and there's no real danger. Even so, he thinks that if the intruder alarms Chen Xuling, they will be in trouble. Even with their presence masked, there's no way to extract someone with him nearby. The leader hastens the group, saying that no matter what, they must find the girl. Zhang arrives at the location and notices something indicating danger, so he observes carefully before taking any action. He discovers it is a stone dragon, a protective artifact. Not only that, but his abilities reveal that lives were sacrificed to fuel this artifact. Only then could it function. This is enough for Zhang to realize he's not dealing with just anyone and that great danger is near. However, this doesn't seem to be the work of any organization he knows, so he considers the possibility that it's related to the remnants of the Zhu family. The Zhu family's genealogy is quite chaotic. Zhang wonders what the Zhu family's motives are for allowing the celestial foxes into the city and accumulating these hordes of beasts. This current operation at Manhua Academy might provide valuable clues to their objectives. He sees someone approaching and decides it's best to hide. From the enemy's perspective, they were escaping with the girl they had been searching for. The leader of the group sees the dragon intact and assumes that whoever entered the barrier has already left. Feeling more secure, he tells the others to turn off their lanterns to save energy in case they need it. He then moves to collect the stone dragon so they can finally leave the area. Zhang confirms that the enemies are from the Zhu family. One is level 20 with analytical abilities, another is level 17 with telekinesis, and the third is level 15 with hypnosis. He reports all this to the captain, mentioning that the enemies were masking their presence and using an external energy source. When analyzing the kidnapped girl, Zhang notices her potential is off the charts, and her abilities seem to be an upgraded version of his own class. He wonders if the Zhu family plans to take control of her. Either way, she's an innocent girl. Thus, the protagonist doesn't want her to be taken by the enemy. However, he witnesses their escape and doesn't understand how they managed to disappear right before his eyes. He decides to seek Manny's help to track them. At the headquarters, Manny says he can sense them heading toward the outskirts of the city, but at this pace, Leu Sizzy won't reach them in time. Zhang says he'll try to delay them, but the captain warns him not to be reckless and to prioritize his safety. The protagonist responds that the Zhu family is behind this and he can't let them escape. He may not be the best for this job, but he believes that with his abilities he can buy enough time for Leu Sizzy to arrive. As he runs through the forest, the leader of the enemy group senses something unusual. He suddenly encounters a creature conjured from dark energy, and cannot believe such a creature could appear like this. Zhang thinks that thanks to the molding and forging technique, the camouflaged Nethermus banner is holding up, but he cannot risk being detected. The leader, at level 20, attempts to analyze it, but is interrupted by the creature, which almost hits him with an attack. The wolf moves behind the leader, who dodges and orders Huang San, the hypnotist, and his group to act. Huang San complies, attempting to hypnotize the creature and stop its attacks. The wolf stops attacking, its eyes glowing, giving the impression that the enemy's ability worked. However, Zhang thinks to himself that his mental energy is infinite and mental attacks don't work on him, but he'll try to use this as an advantage. He wants to make the enemy believe the wolf is truly hypnotized, so he can get close enough to launch a close-range attack. This way, he can take his enemies by surprise. The wolf bites Huang San hard, causing the hypnotist to cry out for help from his leader. A girl in the group attempts to use magic against the wolf to push it away from her companion. Though the wolf is pushed back, the protagonist is pleased to have landed an attack and now focuses on targeting the other two. The enemy girl prepares to use telekinesis to break the gravity around the wolf. Inside the wolf, the protagonist begins to feel the effects. as the gravitational field around the wolf is being controlled. This makes it unable to move and also vulnerable to the enemy's analysis. The leader discovers that it is Zhang Ping, level 9, affiliated with the Iron Soul Shop and the Purgatory Squad, possessing unknown abilities. The enemy scoffs, calling him a mere level 9 human, and asks if Zhang thinks of himself as a hero for trying to face them alone. He also says that Zhang is one of Sidushiba's allies and therefore won't leave this place alive. Amid a violent storm, the protagonist is held captive by the enemies. Meanwhile, he reflects that even though the analyzer doesn't have offensive abilities, his special weapon is a bit problematic. It seems the Zhu family's strength lies entirely in their equipment. Fortunately, even though my body is restrained, this doesn't affect the activation of the subthermist. Zhang wonders why the telekinetic isn't using his powers to deflect the attacks until he is struck by an electric attack, and he feels a surge of energy, until the enemy guesses that this energy affects Zhang's abilities and wants to see how long he can last. However, Zhang realizes the enemy isn't choosing not to dodge, he simply can't. The enemy, surprised to see Zhang standing still, launches an attack. Zhang, however, defends himself and thinks it's time to test his new move. Using his conjuring powers, he throws several blades, but the enemy leader blocks them and tells Zhang to enjoy his last moments alive. What they didn't expect was that Zhang had a plan in mind. Zhang remarks that the leader can't block his attacks because he needs to use his hands to aim before using telekinesis. This gave Zhang the opening he needed to fight back. He conjures a knife with dark energy and uses it to restrain the enemy girl's movement. She then tries to use telekinesis, which surprises Zhang. The opponent says that Zhang made a good attempt, but that she managed to force her right hand free from the restriction he imposed. The enemy mocks Zhang, asking if that's all he's got and if he's already out of energy. The girl taunts Zhang, saying trying to grab her hands is pointless and a waste of time. She declares that his plan could never work and calls him pathetic. However, as Zhang attacks, he realizes his fire powers didn't work as expected. This enrages the enemy, who attacks Zhang with greater intensity. Zhang quickly realizes he's in trouble and ends up getting struck by lightning magic. The girl then comments that Zhang indeed has a few tricks up his sleeve, but he didn't expect their clothes to be fireproof. She smugly tells Zhang that this will be his end. Zhang simply says it's about time. The girl asks what time he's referring to. Zhang reveals that he was merely stalling them. This infuriates them, and the leader accuses Zhang of flirting with death. Zhang senses that the enemies are about to intensify their attacks. At that moment, he is struck, his arm injured. However, he narrowly avoids a fatal hit because Leu Sizzy appears and attacks the enemies. The leader is shocked to see Zhang's ally take down the girl in their group with a single strike. He then becomes the target of Zhang's reinforcement. He asks who she is, but Leu Sizzy merely stares at him with a serious expression. She attacks him intensely and relentlessly. Seeing her ferocity, the enemy becomes desperate. He realizes he has no choice but to use his secret weapon. He takes out a ring imbued with lightning powers and prepares to activate it. Soon after, he spawns lightning across the battlefield, causing explosions around the area. This creates enough distraction for him to escape. Leu Sizzy rushes to Zhang to save him. Meanwhile, the enemy leader flees the scene. Sizzy laments that she couldn't capture one of them alive for interrogation. Looking at Zhang, she notices he's completely unconscious. From a distance, Manny contacts her and tells her to return to headquarters with Zhang. He mentions that the illusory curtain has been breached. The celestial fox princess awaits a visitor. The mayor approaches and asks what her highness desires. She inquires about the preparations for the mutant beasts gathering outside the city, to which the servant replies that everything is going well. From afar, they hear a noise. She asks where the sound is coming from. The mayor wonders if this is the myriad of booming calls, and whether Zhu Zijin is in trouble. Of all people, it had to be a fox princess who noticed it. He tries to cover it up, but you ask if he's seen anything unusual. Her servant denies it. The princess then asks why he seems nervous. He replies that he's been afraid of thunder since childhood and is just startled by it. The queen remarks that such cowardice is expected of him. Yu considers that the sound came from within the city walls, though she can't see anything. She recalls a time when a man was on the brink of death, certain he would perish. But somehow, at a single turn, he vanished without a trace, thinking they could escape so blatantly right under her nose. Looking back, she imagines it must have been some kind of high-level illusion. The princess states that human illusions cannot affect her species, but they can use illusions on their surroundings to obscure the vision of the foxes and deceive them. She begins to consider the possibility that perhaps this entire city is just a facade, a rather cunning plan. Back to Sizzy, she wonders where the kidnapped girl from Hanhai Academy was taken. She doesn't know what happened, but the illusory curtain is definitely disappearing. Looking at the protagonist, she notices that he is waking up. Zhang tries to tell her to use the enemy's lantern and hurry to catch them. In the city, a demonic aura haunts the surroundings. Through it, eyes appear, watching everything. These eyes are searching for something, acting under the orders of the queen, who commands her watchful eyes to find the rat. While running with the girl, the enemy leader nearly forgets her in his haste to escape, until the princess finds him and the false servant realizes he has been discovered. Seeing her move, the mayor tries to stop her, but failing to do so, he thinks he's doomed. The The fugitive tells the others that the Purge Squad has a secret agent embedded in the city. His name is Zhang Ping. He adds that Zhang stumbled upon their operation tonight and that Huang San and Huaner are dead. The Purge Squad sent reinforcements and he had no choice but to use the so-called Thunderous Myriad. His comrade asks if Zhang survived and he confirms it. But I investigated Zhang. Aside from the Purge Squad, he has ties to a place called the Iron Soul Forge, he explains. The rest of the group insists they focus on their mission, getting the girl, known as the Saint, out of the city. Suddenly, they hear a strange noise followed by a scream. Zhu Zijun stops reporting, immediately raising suspicions. The queen's false servant appears and announces that the plan failed because the girl was taken by the fox who killed Zijun. The one reporting smashes the communicator, claiming that years of work have been wasted. But the leader says there is still hope as the girl is alive, and she is the celestial fox's worst nightmare. Princess Yu knows she can't kill her, so she will definitely take her back to the city lord's mansion. One group member asks how they will control the foxes without the saint. The leader replies that there is a secret passage in the lord's mansion that leads directly to the other side of the city, and he's the only one who knows about it. This way, they can funnel the mutant beasts through the mansion, causing problems for the foxes. With this distraction, they could take the opportunity to kidnap the girl again. One of them remarks that it's easier said than done, as Princess Yu is the mansion's guardian, and amid chaos caused by multiple mutant beasts, it won't be easy to pull off. The man states that this is why he plans to use Zhang Ping as a secret agent. Yu is monitoring the entire city, and any disturbance will cause her to act personally. They just need to send their elites to the forge to attack Zhang. This will draw both the Purge Squad and the Fox Princess into a confrontation. While they're fighting, the Zhu family's group will unleash the mutant beasts in the city lord's mansion, catching everyone completely off guard. However, doing this will sever all ties with the celestial foxes, so they must succeed because failure is not an option, and the mayor's identity cannot be exposed. One member praises the plan, saying it's worthy of a Zhu family member, and tells the mayor to continue his duties in the city. Meanwhile, they will act behind the scenes, leaving the saint's fate in Zhu Zemin's hands. The protagonist wakes up again, and Sizzy, worried, asks if he's feeling okay or if anything feels out of place. Zhang asks where he is, and Sizzy explains that this is the Purge Squad's HQ. As he gets up, the protagonist sees that team leader Jinbo is also there and injured. He quickly asks what happened. Sissy mentions that she heard Lu Xiu did this to Jinbo. She's on the move now and is probably trying to detect new targets. Amid this, someone enters the medical wing and notices the protagonist is standing. The woman comments that considering the high-level opponents Zhang faced, it's impressive he's still alive. Not only that, but he even managed to take one of them down, sparking curiosity about how he did it and survived. The protagonist thinks he should remain discreet. Sizzy introduces Shouji, explaining that her ability is to store solar energy. She's the one who treated Zhang's injuries. Zhang feels indebted to Shouji this time because, without her help, who knows how many times he would have died by now. He heard the nurse was strict, but she doesn't seem like it. Shouji says it's nothing and that she won't keep the illusory curtain up any longer anyway. Since Zhang is awake, she invites him to meet everyone, as they need more comprehensive information about what happened last night. Meanwhile, Manny is tired from working with so much paperwork and asks her captain for a break. Her friend agrees. She thought Xiao Wei was sleeping, but Wei's reaction reveals she had been awake the whole time. So Manny asks for her help with the work. However, her friend completely ignores her, which makes Manny extremely annoyed. She does everything she can to wake Wei up. Soon after, the captain appears and sees the two of them arguing. He apologizes but explains that the headquarters is understaffed. He asks them to be patient for now. Shuji shows up and catches everyone's attention. As soon as Manny sees her, she runs into her friend's arms, saying she missed her. The captain then explains that they had been working under the assumption that the Zhu family and the Foxes had formed an alliance to eliminate their common enemies. But now he believes they aren't truly working together, as the Zhu family created a protective barrier that interferes with surveillance. It's clear they're aware of the existence of the Celestial Fox's illusory light curtain. Yet they didn't inform the Foxes about it, which can only mean one thing. They're trying to exploit the illusory curtain. Submission isn't the Zhu family's style, but they're not strong enough to confront the Foxes directly right now. This leads to the belief that the kidnapped girl is the key to defeating the Foxes. The headmaster of Hanhai Academy, Cheng Swili, had only one son, Chen Aowen. Records show that he died 14 years ago, unmarried and without heirs. However, in the same year, Cheng Swili suddenly announced he had a granddaughter. Her name is Chen Junting, and according to our investigation, she has no blood ties to Pearl City. She likely comes from one of the outer villages. It seems Cheng Swili has kept her hidden from everyone. Her citizen record is as clean as a blank sheet. There's not even a record of whether she is awakened. Zhang mentions that he analyzed the girl and noticed she has an ability called Holy Blood. The captain assumes that the girl might have saintly ancestry, but he thinks it's too coincidental, and Zhang tries to understand exactly what this ability does. At the city lord's mansion, the girl is being held captive but doesn't seem to realize it. She's enjoying the place and even asks if many people live there. The fox princess appears upset and the girl asks if everything is okay. He responds that it is. The girl tries to cheer her up, saying her grandfather always says to eat something sweet when feeling down. She offers tea and calls Yu's sister. However, Yu is furious about the whole situation and attempts to attack the girl. Yet nothing happens to her, leaving Yu confused and unable to understand why. The girl remains oblivious to the malice surrounding her and exudes kindness, offering a cookie to her sister. She says the cookies are fresh out of the oven, but Yu can only think about why her attack didn't work. She eats the cookie, making the girl extremely happy. This even makes Yu feel bad for trying to harm a child, but she quickly questions why she feels pity for a human. The girl continues drinking her tea but finds it unpleasant, saying the water used for the tea is bad and calling the person who made it an idiot. Yu hears this and knows she's the one responsible. The girl then leaves, saying she'll prepare another tea and asks Yu to wait. Yu complies but begins to feel something is wrong, as she has never felt this way around anyone before. She reminds herself that she is the princess of the celestial foxes, and it's impossible for her to have any flaws. Yu also reflects that this girl is not normal and wonders who she is and why others are after her. In the training room, Sizzy tells Zhang that they are very similar since they can control their abilities with their minds and alter their forms at will. But there's a fundamental difference. Her water element is renewable and can be used repeatedly, while Zhang's nethermist is single-use only. This is because Zhang hasn't figured out how to convert tangible nethermist back into its intangible form. If it were like water, capable of alternating between solid, liquid, and gas, it would be much more useful. The protagonist thinks there are some advantages to the nethermist not being tangible, since he doesn't have to carry around a bunch of gourds to store things. Immediately after, Sizzy attacks, telling him to stay focused on the fight. Because he's distracted, he takes a heavy blow. However, he doesn't take any damage as he uses his ability to create a force field and absorb the full impact. Sissy remarks that he's lucky he can convert fear into nethermist, which somehow compensates for his lack of durability, and then attacks him again. Zhang says he can still dodge attacks at this level, but looking at the ground, he notices that the ice is melted. Being entirely focused on the ice, he forgets that Sissy controls water in all its states, allowing her to trap him in its liquid form. She approaches and says that if his opponent isn't afraid of him, his nethermist abilities won't be useful for long. The protagonist replies that even so, his attacks are strong enough to be used only once and still take down his opponents. He then conjures a dagger and points it at Sizzy. She shields herself with water and challenges him to show just how strong his attacks really are. Zhang intensifies his powers even further. When he attacks, he manages to pierce Sizzy's shield. Zhang declares himself the winner, and Sizzy admits it's impressive that he managed to get through her defenses despite the level difference between them. Sizzy thinks that those nethermist beasts might be descendants of some king-level mutant beast. They could have inherited a special trait that allows the nethermist to inflict damage beyond its level. However, Zhang still lacks real combat experience because if this had been a fight to the death, he would have been roasted. To illustrate the real danger of her power, she heats the water trapping Zhang. Sissy asserts that understanding the nature of one's powers is crucial and advises Zhang to study his abilities more. For instance, water can transform into ice, hot water, or vapor, and each state has the potential to change the tide of battle. The protagonist then uses his powers to transform into a spider, knowing that Sizzy is afraid of them. Provoked, she blasts him with a jet of water to the face. He accidentally swallows some of the water. Seeing this, Sissy panics and tells him to spit it out immediately, explaining that the water she uses is extremely toxic. Zhang, however, tells her to get a potion and stop shaking him like that. Sizzy asks how he feels, and Zhang says his body feels strange as if he can't control it. Suddenly, he sees that his body has turned into water. He's completely shocked by this. However, he realizes he may have awakened a new ability by accident. After analyzing it, he confirms not only this but also that he's advanced to level 6. Still, he doesn't fully understand these abilities yet. Sissy is very concerned about him, but Zhang assures her not to worry because he'll return to normal once he learns to control this new ability better. Since it's similar to his previous abilities, he assumes he won't have much trouble controlling it and just needs to focus on his body. Instead of returning to normal, he starts experimenting with other forms. He tries several times to return to normal, but only shifts into increasingly bizarre shapes. Finally, he manages to revert to his human form, but Sizzy becomes extremely flustered. Zhang has returned without any clothes and doesn't even notice. His friend scolds him and tells him to get dressed. Sizzy asks what exactly happened to him now. The protagonist explains that by accidentally drinking her water, he awakened a new ability called Pure Water Body. Sizzy thinks that this is a power most water element users can only dream of. Zhang's growth rate is incredibly fast, especially this pure water form. But the fact that he awakened it so easily, could he be an unlimited level awakened? Seeing her confused, Zhang asks if everything's okay. She says yes. Then her communicator goes off. The team leader reports that the Iron Soul Forge is under attack and requests immediate reinforcements. Sissy orders all available nearby units to be dispatched and says she'll head there herself shortly. Zhang insists that if his friends are in trouble, he wants to help, but Sizzy warns him it could be a trap. Zhang counters that with his new powers, he can escape any trap by transforming into water. Knowing she can't dissuade him, Sizzy heads to the mission and tells Zhang not to stray too far from her. When they arrive at the forge, Sizzy asks where so many assassins came from, tells one of them to take a team to search for survivors, while the other stays on the defensive in case of more attacks. The protagonist immediately goes to look for Uncle Liu and the girls. Eventually, he finds Chu Kan. Upon seeing the girl all injured, he becomes concerned. But Chu Chang tells him to go after his uncle and Wang, pointing in their direction. She also says that both are badly injured as well. Sizzy appears and says she'll take care of it herself, telling the protagonist to stay and look after the shopkeeper. Chu Chang lost her left hand during the confrontation, and Zhang applies the proper bandages. Still, he remains worried about her. The shopkeeper tells him she's fine, saying she only lost part of her arm, not her life. Shortly after, Sizzy returns with the others. She tells her team to take the wounded out of there. The protagonist sees Wang Jimin on a stretcher, but Sizzy reassures him that even though he's unconscious, he's still fine. Chu Chang says she's relieved as long as they're okay. But she warns the protagonist to be careful because the assassins were after him, asking if Zhang did something to make such powerful enemies. Zhang tells her not to worry about him and to focus on recovering. Stissi says there's no safe place in the city now, so they'll be taken to a safe location outside the city for treatment. Zhang blames himself for this. He says that the Zhu family members are the only ones in the city who want him dead. Stissi says she'll arrange for someone to investigate, but then he starts to hear something. Leu Xiu mentions that the energy fluctuation came from this area. Many men of her kind were massacred nearby, and 2 humans might be involved. The protagonist recognizes the voice and realizes she's nearby. She also says that in these times, it's better to waste food than let anything go unchecked. Before being hit, he throws himself at Sizzy, shielding her from the enemy's attack. The fox disguised as Leu Xiu remarks that it was impressive, because he could predict her attack before it happened. Zhang asks if Sizzy is okay. She says yes, but adds that this operation was supposed to be top secret, so the enemies shouldn't have arrived so quickly. However, the protagonist explains that the fox had been watching the entire city, making it easy to locate them. Ironically, he says it's been a long time since he last saw Leu Xiu. Stizzy steps forward, telling Zhang to run while she keeps the opponent occupied. She then attacks the fox, and the protagonist tries to analyze her but lacks sufficient range. The fox realizes Sizzy didn't hesitate to attack her, which means her identity has been exposed. She concludes they were behind all of this all along. Soon, she tries to surprise attack Sizzy, but with an ice barrier, Sizzy protects herself. However, Sizzy notices that her ice barrier was shattered by the fox with a single blow, surprising her. Leu Xiu thinks that even though Sizzy knows who she is, she still can't see through her illusion and is merely reacting to changes in the cold air around the attacks. She attacks again, wanting to see if Sizzy will dodge it. Sizzy becomes slightly disoriented by the attack, but from a distance, the protagonist guides her where to go. She thinks it's a good thing Zhang is around because otherwise, she'd truly be in trouble. She follows his instructions and successfully dodges the enemy's attacks. Leu Xiu realizes her attacks aren't working. She soon notices the protagonist is helping her opponent. Because of this, she starts targeting him as well, but Zhang says he can dodge anything she throws at him. As Leu Xiu suspected, Zhang perfectly dodges her attacks and concludes he's the only one who can see through her disguise, deciding it's better to kill him first. The protagonist dodges but notices Sizzy is left vulnerable, so he tries to create a force field to protect her. As soon as he succeeds, the protagonist goes back to taunting the enemy, confusing his friend. Leu Xiu seems amused. She remarks that Zhang hid well as they tested him repeatedly, and he always managed to slip through their grasp. But Leu Xiu claims this time will be different. She says he endured 3 of her tails but asks if he can withstand 1,000 of them. In this way, the protagonist's power reserves are depleted as he defends against the attacks. Leu Xiu says that if he can last just 1 more second, he can consider himself victorious. Zhang thinks he released all of his dark power at once, and it still wasn't enough to slow her down, wondering if this is how it all ends. However, he sees a projection of the captain, telling him to listen carefully as he can create this opportunity for him only once. While the fox attacks, our heroes try to defend themselves, until Leu Xiu notices unusual movement beneath them. In turn, the protagonist waits for the captain's signal, and as soon as it is given, he breaks the barrier that was protecting him. Then he grabs Siz's hand and starts running away from the enemy. Leu Xiu sees this and says they aren't going anywhere. Immediately, she uses her communication ability to speak with all the foxes in the city, telling everyone who can hear to find Zhang Ping and not let him escape. Moments later, in a safe house outside Pearl City, the protagonist visits Chu Qiang and says that he is now part of the Purgatory Squad specifically to prevent the city from falling into the hands of the celestial foxes. Zhang apologizes for not telling her earlier, saying it was safer that way, and also apologizes for what happened to them in the shop. Chu Qiang tries to reassure him. She says the protagonist saved her uncle and the others. Zhang replies that he will reclaim the shop, but in the meantime, she and the others must stay there for their own safety. From a distance, Sizzy observes him and says that Zhang has grown without her realizing it. Xiu Chang notices this and tells her that the girl is waiting for him and asks not to be the reason that keeps them apart. Then he leaves the room and goes to Sizzy to ask if she means anything. At first, Sizzy doesn't like being called a girl, but Zhang says Xiu Chang only called her that because he forgot her name, and it's just a term of endearment. Zhang thinks he is always polite to Sizzy, especially after everything they've been through. After all, he has lived 2 lifetimes, being much older than her. Next, Sizzy says she'll let it go, as it's just a title anyway, and tells him he can call her whatever he wants and says he should follow her. Sissy says that Zhang has been exposed, so he won't be able to return to the city for a while and must wait for further orders. The information he provided about the saint was very valuable. Additionally, he handled the serial killer mission like a professional, so he should think of this as a small reward from the Purge Squad. She hands the protagonist a vial of a liquid called golden blood extracted from Jinbo. He needs to draw and store it periodically. It has immense healing properties and is usually used to treat the wounded or prolong the lives of the most esteemed veterans. Soon, Zhang must try consuming it there in the training fields to see if he can inherit any of its powers. And one more thing about the golden blood. It is a lineage-based ability, which means there's a chance it can be passed down to his descendants. Just something for Zhang to keep in mind. Since Sizzy doesn't want Zhang to become a target for any hunters, he considers that there's a chance, not a guarantee. Moreover, he doesn't even know if he'll ever have a wife. Although he doesn't want to think about the distant future right now, he drinks the liquid from the vial, hoping for something good to come out of it, as the results have been overwhelmingly positive in the past. After drinking, Sizzy asks if he has gained any new ability. Zhang says he doesn't feel anything different. However, upon looking at his hand, he sees a different kind of blood flowing. Analyzing this, he realizes the process worked, as it gave him the ability to transform his body into pure blood among other powers. With this, it's as if he can precisely sense the condition of a target just by being near them. Sissy is startled upon seeing the blood and asks what is happening. Zhang looks at her and notices a scar on her face. She insists it's nothing and that you shouldn't worry about it. However, he knows there's more than meets the eye. Yet Sizzy changes the subject and asks if there's anything else different about him. The protagonist explains that in this form, he can sense the life force in every creature around him, allowing him to merge with them and heal wounds, including scars. Sizzy concludes that he can also heal Chu Kang's severed arm. He states that as long as there is enough blood, he can construct an entire body from a single piece of skin. Thus, his water powers will serve for combat, while his blood powers will serve for support. Sissy immediately rushes Zhang to go to Chu Chang and help her, but he asks Sizzy if they can talk later, not as members of the same team, but as old friends. Even though she is embarrassed, she agrees to meet him. Outside in the forest beyond the city, animals living a peaceful life hear a deafening noise. Then mutant beasts start approaching in hordes, devastating everything in their path. They seem ready to face something big, something that matches their strength. Back at headquarters, Manny sees the captain receiving a report about the sacred village of the ancestors. She asks him what it is for. The captain says she might not remember this. Although they committed many heinous acts while in power, in the beginning, the domesticated beast, Zhu, was considered a hero. To help everyone survive the Great Winter Calamity, the head of the Zhu family, Zhu Qiang, fused with the sun god bird. He flew into the sky every day, bringing light and war to the people. He persisted like this for 10 years until he finally died of exhaustion. Manny knows this part. After Zhu Qiang's death, she says he was buried in the Sunset Mountains outside Pearl City. The survivors outside the city honored him by guarding his tomb. Centuries later, these people married and had children, gradually forming a village now known as the Sacred Ancestral Village. But she asks what this has to do with the Sacred Ancestral Village now. He replies that every 100 years a saint appears in the sacred village of the ancestors. The saint's lineage can protect the village from any mutant beast attacks. Manny is surprised to hear this, and the captain continues, saying the Zhu family is after the saint to control the foxes. Manny asks why the saint appeared at Hanhai Academy and how an ancestral saint from the village could remain quiet with something like this happening. The captain responds that this might be intentional. If they claim the saint is being held captive within the city, the Sacred Ancestral Village could use this as an excuse to launch an attack on Pearl City. Manny asks why they would do that. The captain explains that 150 years ago in Pearl City, there was a tyrannical ruler. To prevent the Zhu family's mistakes from happening again, the Purging Squad listed her as the top wanted criminal. In the end, they successfully expelled her from the city with the help of the current city lord. Later, she somehow became the leader of the Sacred Ancestral Village. Perhaps she never tried to take Pearl City, but instead waited for the perfect moment to counterattack. The Purgatory Squad is hidden in several safe houses outside the city, where these houses are built into stones with trees around them for camouflage. In the third safe house is where Sizzy is now. She hears a strange noise and imagines it might be the Zhu family attacking, thinking it's best to go check. But she considers that if this hideout is discovered by enemies, those inside will be in grave danger. So she contemplates leaving the protagonist in command to protect everyone in her absence. Meanwhile, Zhang surprises her by saying he's done it. She asks what he means and sees an energy lantern in his hands. Zhang explains that he thought it was a waste to throw it away, so he decided to recharge it. The lantern not only provides light, but also amplifies the powers of whoever carries it, making it another item for the protagonist's inventory. He finally manages to light it up a little, infusing it with his dark ability, and its effects are much stronger now, something he attributes to pure luck. Now with the lantern lit and keeping the hideout secure, they can leave to scout without worrying about the location. Outside, they see the mutant beasts, and due to their numbers, the protagonist asks if it's really the Zhu family controlling all of them. Sissy contacts HQ and reports the real situation of the safe house they're in. She also mentions that the mutant beasts, despite being numerous, are not high level. Zhang asks why they're running so fast, as it doesn't seem like they're heading to a specific destination, but rather running wildly everywhere, until he notices something and calls his friend's attention. Sissy also sees the same thing he does. She quickly reports that a massive horde of zombies is approaching the city, approximately 5,000 undead. The captain realizes that 10,000 mutant beasts, 50,000 zombies, and a number of celestial foxes, along with the remnants of the Zhu family, are still inside the city. With the current manpower shortage, there's no way to fight so many enemies at once. Suji asks if she should intervene, but the captain says they still have one option, and tells the three girls to activate the celestial curtain once more. They reply that they no longer have the celestial curtain and ask what the captain is planning. He explains that the day before he caught the fox princess off guard. Because he covered for Zhang, her power shouldn't have returned yet, but they can't count on the city guard or the investigation team. Since there are still many powerful fighters in the city, they need to record a message in the celestial curtain, warning everyone about the zombies. Once all the awakened ones have gathered in the city, the squad will blend in with them. This way, they will protect the city while avoiding the celestial fox's surveillance. The captain also orders Zhang and Sizzy to push the mutant beasts and zombies away from the city as much as possible to buy time for reinforcements to arrive. At the 5th safe house, another group receives orders from the captain. He tells this group to quickly move near the 3rd safe house, as they must provide immediate support to Leu Sizzy. The group leader gathers his team for this mission, saying that their time to shine has arrived. At the city lord's mansion, Zhu Zemin reflects that the attack on the blacksmith's workshop should have gone smoothly. He mentions that the princess isn't at the mansion, and the next step can proceed. On the other side, his team reports problems. An unidentified horde of zombies appeared out of nowhere outside the city, scaring the mutant beasts. And now they are out of control. They aren't sure who is behind this, but Zhu Zemin orders less talk and more action to contain the mess immediately. Because if this plan collapses, everyone will be doomed. Then he considers that there's no choice but to find the saint and extract her when the opportunity arises. Until, moments later, Zhu Zemin sees another team, the number 1 squad of the city guard. Zhu Zemin wonders what leader Link D is doing there with so many people. Facing Captain Lin, Zhu Zemin asks what he owes the pleasure of his visit today. He mentions that the city lord hasn't returned yet, but says he would be happy to relay any urgent matters. However, he is completely ignored and imagines that the captain is suspecting something. Then Lin, accompanied by his team, enters the quarters, and Zhu Zemin grows desperate. Yet he wonders what's happening there. Because inside, Chen Junting is hosting a ball, and upon seeing more people arrive, invites them to join the party. Next, the captain drinks a glass of wine, and wonders how he ended up there, but soon remembers that His Highness ordered them to capture Zhang Ping. Noticing he spilled wine on his clothes, the saint remarks that uncles can be so clueless. Lin then wonders if she summoned her kind to this place, because this feeling is like being near the king of his clan. Chen Junting approaches him and says her grandfather always says not to waste food. The captain bows before her and addresses her as Lady Saint. Chen Junting doesn't understand why she's being called that, asserting that she simply considers everyone a friend. Then she takes Lin to dance while Zhu Zemin watches from afar. He thinks the saint can only influence mutant beasts and wonders if Lin Ketty might have also been replaced by a fox. After all, the princess didn't say that. It seems she doesn't fully trust him yet. From the looks of it, there may not be any humans left alive in the city guard. In fact, everyone there might have been transformed. But it seems that everyone is under Chen Junting's control, and she herself doesn't even know it yet. So Zhu Zemin imagines that if he can convince her to work with him, the plan could proceed directly to the next phase. Then he approaches the girl and asks if she is having fun. Chen Junting replies that she is and is enjoying making new friends. She only didn't expect Leu Xiu to give her something so big, and even asks if Leu will return soon. Zhu Zemin says perhaps as she has to take care of something first, but in his thoughts he notes that the girl is the one who summoned everyone there in the first place. Then he says he knows an even more entertaining place than this one and grabs her, trying to take her away. However, she pulls away from him, saying that she doesn't want to leave just yet, and besides, she doesn't know Zhu Zemin very well. Until a terrifying presence asks Zhu Zemin how he knows her name. From that moment, the party stops and everyone present stares at him. Back at the 3rd safe house, Sizzy and Zhang are battling the creatures outside. The protagonist gathers some mutant beasts and tells his friend to freeze them. She does so, capturing several of them at once. But since there are so many, some manage to advance and break through the ice. Sissy says that this alone isn't enough to stop them. Zhang steps forward and takes the lead. He realizes that the fear of these creatures fuels his dark powers, and he can use it as much as he wants. Now that he's at his full potential, he doesn't need to hold back. He summons several dark creatures, even a dragon, to face the mutant beasts, claiming that they just need to hold out until reinforcements arrive. Confronting the enemies, all the protagonist sees is an endless supply of energy and nethermist experience. With just a few hundred more of these guys, he could boost his stats or even level up. The mutant beasts try to scatter and avoid the dragon. The protagonist notices this is rather clever on their part, and sees that the monsters are focused only on fleeing, with no intention of fighting him head-on. Meanwhile, Sizzy attacks them with ice. Even though the creatures try to escape, she still manages to take down a few. Zhang compliments his friend's work. He wishes he had a way to count how many creatures he's defeated, but Sizzy tells him to stay focused on the fight. The dragon clashes with the mutant beasts but can't handle them all. Suddenly, elemental attacks are fired, and they hit the protagonist's dragon. He wonders where it came from, then notices the approaching zombies. He realizes that they're using magic to attack, even though they're undead. He concludes that the zombie stereotype he knows doesn't apply in this world. Not only that, but by analyzing them, he discovers these zombies were people from the sacred ancestral village. He thinks he needs to find a way to report this information to headquarters. The zombies attack the dragon, and the protagonist realizes they feel no fear, so he can't use that as fuel. Sizzy warns him to keep his distance from the zombies, but Zhang decides he won't rely solely on his dark energy abilities. He will also use water abilities. This way, he manages to distance himself from the enemies, and by combining his abilities, he incinerates some zombies with fire. Then he uses their flaming bodies as fireballs and hurls them at the others. Zhang realizes that now his stats are double those of other Awakened at the same level. Sizzy, on the other hand, attacks the monsters with an ice sword and slices through them with ease. The zombies even try to surround her, but with his dragon, the protagonist moves in to help her. He says that was just the first wave of enemies, about 1,000 in total, and the second wave will arrive in about half an hour. Zhang mentions that the zombies can use magical abilities, and his friend says they must have been awakened in life and retain their abilities even after death. This makes the protagonist think it must be the work of the Zhu family, but then he remembers analyzing them and seeing they were from the sacred ancestral village. His captain calls him and says that although the Zhu family is ruthless, they consider beast taming a form of worship and wouldn't stoop to using something as twisted as zombies. He informs the other teams that intelligence suggests the sacred ancestors are connected to the incident. Sizzy is shocked by this information. Now she knows, in other words, the one who injured her in the past, the same one responsible for her scar, might be behind this. However, she quickly tells the protagonist to hold his breath because someone has released a toxic gas. Zhang realizes this smell is similar to something he's encountered before, resembling hydrogen sulfide, reminding him of a massive fire caused by hydrogen sulfide when he was part of a rescue team. If this gas indeed contains hydrogen sulfide, it should be flammable. Because of this, he tells Sizzy to be careful, as the gas could explode. She asks what he's going to do about it. Zhang responds that there's no time to explain and tells his friend to just trust him. He quickly ignites a flame with his powers, causing all the surrounding gas to explode. Sizzy shielded herself with a water-based force field, and Zhang is immune to fire, so he wasn't harmed. Then he says the second wave is approaching. Sizzy asks if they didn't have half an hour, but they realize the enemies are ahead of schedule. Seeing the enemy approach, Zhang is startled but tries to analyze it. The enemy states that the protagonist neutralized a potion from an experienced zombie and says that the two of them have real potential. He manages to analyze the captain from back then, but just like Liu Xiu, he couldn't analyze this enemy. He assumes that his ability isn't strong enough to analyze high-level targets from a distance, so he tries to analyze the enemies nearby and succeeds. Zhang sees all their attributes, including those of the main enemy. Zhu Xiangming, a member of the sacred ancestral village, became someone capable of creating mutant zombies. The old man says that, as much as he enjoys fighting personally, he has more urgent matters to deal with now and orders his servants to bring the two back alive or dead. Zhang asks Sizzy what fallen means. She explains that some possess abilities that change over time depending on how they are used. These abilities evolve into a form that best suits them, but if their mental energy isn't strong enough, they can be consumed by their own power. They become slaves to their abilities. These people are called the Fallen, and most of them are incredibly powerful. The enemies approach, and the two realize they are in trouble. But even so, they don't give up the fight. Zhang and Sizzy face the monsters without lowering their guard, even though the enemies outnumber them. Until Sizzy communicates with headquarters, she reports that a fallen Awakener appears, riding a giant zombie, and she doesn't have the strength to stop it. The enemy is leading a massive horde of zombies toward the northern part of the city and is at level 39, posing a significant threat. Next, Zhang analyzes one of the giants and decides to try to control it to have the monster on his side. He uses some dark energy chains to bind it, but the monster's strength is so great that it manages to break free. Soon, the protagonist realizes this zombie is completely different from the ones he fought before. After that, they hear a loud noise in the distance and realize the sound is coming from Pearl City, wondering if the enemy forces have already reached the city gates. At Pearl City's northern gate, a crowd of mutant beasts attacks. However, Feng Leixin stands against them. He is a master from the city's best martial arts school. Using his skills, he defeats and drives away the enemies. But he's not alone. Accompanied by his fellow fighters, he declares that no one will pass through the city gates today. Even the master of the martial arts school where Zhang studies is with him and promptly tells the others not to let any creature get too close to the gates. Thus, the master and apprentices fight against the enemies. One of the awakened zombies tries to carve a path for the others, but one of the fighters says he studied the enemy's movements beforehand and notices the zombie is different from the rest. He blocks the enemy's strikes, even injuring himself in the process. The zombie becomes enraged by this and resorts to using its magical powers. From a distance, Feng Leixin observes and wonders if the enemy is using the Monkey King style. He questions who this zombie is. The zombie continues to attack with all its might, but the martial arts master fights back equally fiercely. He manages to hold his own against the enemy, even grabbing it and taking it high into the air. Then he slams it down with a brutal fall. As soon as he lands, he even earns experience points, but as he defeats the zombie, he notices that a type of card drops from it, something that looks familiar. When he picks it up, he sees it's an identification card for Senior Lin Benchi. The master says this card belonged to one of his martial arts brothers and wonders if this zombie is really Lin Benchi, who disappeared 30 years ago. Back then, Lin Benchi left the city to investigate the case of the missing awakened ones, but he himself mysteriously vanished. Feng Leixin could never have imagined that his friend would become a zombie and suffer such a fate. He wonders if the older brother he knew is truly gone. He recalls when the two trained together at the academy. Lin Benchi was more experienced and gave lessons to Leixin. He would tell him that even though the master never had great hopes for Feng Leixin, he was clearly improving very quickly and encouraged him to practice a little more, because once he taught him everything, he wanted to wipe that smug look off the old man's face. Back in the present, Feng Leixin, crying, asks his older brothers since when his fists became so slow and weak. He also asks how he dares dishonor the Beast King's fist. Not only that, but how he could dishonor his brothers as well, and promises to find the one who did this to his brother. Thus, Feng Leixin activates his secret ability. He becomes engulfed in flames with his body reaching over 500 degrees. He warns everyone to stay back, otherwise, anyone in his way will get burned. After that, he takes off at extreme speed, relentlessly striking his former friend. Even though he knows his friend is now a zombie, Feng Leixin still feels remorse for what he's doing. However, this doesn't stop him from attacking, because he has lost hope that his friend could return to normal. Now that he's stronger than his senior, Feng Leixin defeats him and wishes his old friend to rest in peace. From a distance, the zombie's creator watches this scene and never imagined his masterpiece would be beaten so severely. But it doesn't matter now because he sees Feng Leixin and claims that he will make a good replacement. However, Feng Leixin confronts the enemy and asks if he's truly admitting to turning his senior into a zombie. The enemy responds that yes, he did, and he feels no remorse. He calls the rest of humanity insects and asks if Feng Leixin truly believes he can defeat his entire army. In summary, the cleanup team began investigating the Zhu family. The Smithy was thrown into chaos, a successful plan as the Fox Princess was lured by the protagonist. The plan to draw mutant beasts to the city lord's mansion failed. The mansion served as the saint's captivity, and the Zhu family's plan to rescue her failed as a large number of foxes had gathered there. The Zhu family's purpose was investigated, and it was discovered that they intended to attract celestial foxes and use the saint to control them, thus ruling the city. The cause of the wave of missing people was also investigated and linked to the ancestral saint's village. The celestial curtain was successfully restarted, and the city's combat force was assembled. Outside the city walls, mutant beasts and zombies surrounded the area and attempted to break in. Meanwhile, in the ancestral saint's village, the leader receives news that everyone has arrived and informs them about this operation. She explains that they are to coordinate with a junior army of living corpses to disrupt the city's order and perhaps loot some supplies along the way. But she states that as soon as the Zhou brothers successfully rescue the saint, they must retreat immediately without hesitation. One of the servants has a question and asks if the best king-level mutation in the city could become a frightening factor. Additionally, they started the war and ask why they have to retreat after rescuing the saint. The leader says the old fox awakened long ago, waiting for the failure to show up personally. The servant asks if it's not too dangerous to attack now. The leader reassures him, saying that although the saint has not fully awakened, the impact she's created is so great that not even a king-level mutant beast can easily surpass it. Before taking her away, the foxes didn't act recklessly. To take the city, besides the fox, the greatest threat to them would be the failure in their cleanup team. So the leader arranged for a secret agent to open the city gates in advance with the goal of creating enough chaos in the city. She says they should use the saint as a diversion to start a war, letting the zombies into the city, and leaving the cleanup team to handle this large-scale invasion. There's no other way except to activate the radiant pearl of the sun and moon. Once this is done, they will expose themselves and the cleanup team. As for why they need to retreat, without the saint to contain the fox, the cleanup team will also be exposed. so it's easier to wait for the fox to fight them to the death, leaving the city open for attack. The servant says that, according to the scout's report, the Zhu family seems to be under the Saint's power and asks if they affected the operation. The leader replies that she sensed the Saint and believes she is still in a state of mental confusion. In this case, the Zhu family cannot persuade her to serve them. The reason she revealed the Zhou brothers to retrieve the Saint is because they have noble blood flowing in their veins, allowing them to communicate directly with the Saint. And perhaps to deceive others, the high-ranking Zhu family officials did not directly participate in this event. If they try to gradually forcefully take the Saint, they would not be a match for the Zhou brothers. In this way, the servant says their leader is wise. After that, she says they should also leave, and so they do. The day breaks, and the heroes are still fighting. Sizzy and Zhang haven't had a moment of rest yet. The enemies are so numerous that they seem infinite. Zhang gets distracted for a moment and notices his friend's about to be attacked, so he warns her to be careful. Fatigue has made Sizzy careless, but even so, she manages to defend herself. However, the enemy's attack broke her ice defense, leaving her vulnerable. Seeing this, Zhang feels obligated to try to help her. Even with his strength nearly depleted and being held by zombies, he attempts to defend Sizzy, until the enemy prepares to attack again. Desperately, Zhang shouts for her to be careful. But before she is hit directly, a squire appears to help them. Upon seeing him, Sizzy asks if he is Shu Chang. Meanwhile, Zhang sees phantom swords flying toward the enemies, and wonders if friendly forces are approaching, as the enemies are flung into the air by the attacks. A girl appears to assist them. She apologizes for being late. Nevertheless, she spares no effort in attacking the enemies. While the phantom swords strike, the squire defends the others. The leader of the reinforcement group arrives and sarcastically asks Sizzy if her swordsmanship is getting rusty. She simply tells him not to be so talkative. Sizzy warns the newcomers not to underestimate the enemies, because physical attacks seem to be useless against these ogres. Then Zhang speaks up, saying he knows how to defeat them. He asks the group leader for help in restraining the enemy. The leader attacks the ogre head-on, creating an opening for Zhang to act. Zhang sneaks behind the ogre and recalls that the fallen one they identified earlier used poison to control the zombies, a poison that can be ignited. He throws snake scales at the ogre and attempts to combine them with the poison he captured earlier. This way, he plans to completely sever the control. The snake scale enters the enemy's body. Zhang then triggers an explosion. This allows him to defeat the enemy, as planned, turning the ogre into a barbecue. But he doesn't feel victorious, as he states that the real troublemaker has already arrived at Pearl City. He informs the group leader that there are some injured individuals hiding in the third safe house, using an item to conceal their location, though he doesn't know how long it will last. The leader says the captain has already informed them of everything and assures him they will take care of the injured, having just witnessed the protagonist's abilities. He insists that the city needs Zhang while the support group will handle the wounded. Reluctantly, Zhang entrusts them with this responsibility. He departs, leaving Sizzy with the support group. However, the leader tells Sizzy to return to the city as well, claiming they are sufficient for the assigned task. She agrees and heads out too, telling Zhang to wait for her. At the southern gate of Pearl City, a crowd of enemies attacks, but the martial arts master defends the area. One of the allied beasts tells his companion that the healer is recovering, providing complete cover. They try to recover from the human attacks, until a fireball is hurled toward the enemies, exploding them and forcing them to scatter. Feng Leishan asks if that's all they've got and tells them not to hold back, encouraging them to use all the tricks they have. The zombie creator comments that this poison was originally his most effective weapon, but wonders why he's recently encountered more fire-type awakeners. Feng Leishan then attacks him, and the old necromancer says he is being underestimated. But the punch Feng Leishan delivers sends the old man flying. He declares it's not over, as he wants to pay back the harm caused to his senior. He unleashes a series of explosive strikes. Debris falls from the sky like rain. Feng Leishan says that to catch a thief, one must first capture the king. With this, he assumes the zombies will stop now that their leader has fallen. But when he looks at the undead, that's not what he sees. He wonders why the walking corpses are still moving, until he notices the necromancer getting up, and the old man asks if his opponent really thought he could defeat him so easily. The live host poison borrows the host's essence directly from the soul, sacrificing its life and controlling the body to revive itself. Thus, the old man is revived. Not only that, but Feng Leishan starts to feel something strange in his body and begins to realize what the enemy has done to him. The old man says he injects his venom directly into his opponent's body and now just needs to wait for it to spread throughout their system, turning them into a zombie. This enrages Feng Leishan. He activates his Crimson Emperor Immortal Body ability, entering the second stage of his flame form, reaching a temperature of 1,000 degrees and enhancing his strength and endurance. Seeing this, the necromancer remarks that raising his body temperature to counter the venom is a waste of energy. He claims that the flammable venom is only the most basic type, as the old man's control over venom extends beyond just one kind. Strong zombies have received various venoms from the old man, and their hosts do not die. They simply fall under the necromancer's control. Near the third safe house, the ogre that the protagonist defeated gets back up, surprising the support team. The old man uses everything he has to attack Feng Leixin, but the martial arts master declares that he will spare no one. However, the necromancer says he apparently doesn't understand the situation yet, and since he misses his brother so much, he invites Feng Leixin to join him. The martial artist thinks he must act quickly and decisively if he wants to win. Thus, he fights against the enemies sent by the necromancer. He spares no energy in attacking them, as his rage fuels him in these moments. But even this doesn't stop the enemy's venom from spreading in his body. Feng Leixin looks at his hand and notices how fast the venom is spreading. He feels his efforts are not enough. The energy required to activate the final form of the Crimson Emperor immortal body is insufficient, and if this continues, he too will become a zombie. Feng Leixin knows that if he loses, the Northern Gate will fall completely. This makes him question whether the heavens want to destroy his beloved Pearl City. Nearby, Sizzy and Zhang approach, and she says that, according to the group's information, the martial artist is trapped among enemies, but she tells Zhang to save the people first. Back to Feng Leixin, he continues to fight, even though he's quite weakened. Sizzy approaches and tries to help him. She attacks the enemies surrounding him. This motivates Feng Leixin even more, to the point of summoning a flaming tornado, sending several enemies into the air. He sees the protagonist and tells him to go back, saying it's dangerous there. But Zhang reassures his senior, saying he's prepared. The protagonist says he will treat Feng Leixin's wound, even though the latter says it's impossible. Little does he know about Zhang's recently acquired healing abilities. Because of this, he simply tells his senior to relax while the healing method is applied. Feng Leixin finds this healing method quite strange, but notices that not only have his wounds been healed, but his stamina has also been restored, and he praises Zhang's work. The protagonist warns that he can't remove the venom from his body, he can only suppress it. Feng Leixin says that's enough, as he only needs a little more time to deal with this inhuman enemy. Feng Leixin declares that his opponent is already defeated, and as a precaution, wants to assess the healer's strength first. The necromancer tells Feng Leixin to become his obedient zombie, but the martial arts master refuses. Then he increases his temperature, raising it to 3,000 degrees and boosting his physical strength and agility. With this, he destroys several enemies, and immediately goes after the old man. Feng Leixin strikes him with all his strength, until the protagonist points out that the old man's life is tied to the zombies he controls. To kill him completely, the zombie connected to him must also be eliminated. But the necromancer insists his opponent cannot kill him. Even so, Feng Leixin doesn't stop attacking. He raises his body temperature to 4,000 degrees along with his other attributes. Everything around him erupts into flames. However, Feng Leixin says this isn't enough and asks the protagonist if there's any way to quickly increase his body temperature. Zhang says his flames can't reach the high temperatures of his senior, and his recipe won't help. But he mentions that this thing might. He then gives his senior some snake scales, and Feng Leixin asks why he didn't give them sooner. After eating them, he says this is the true fire ear. Now he feels more prepared to fight. In another area, ice strikes the enemies. Sizzy asks one of the allies what happened. He replies that he never thought he'd see the healing form again in his life. Thus, the heroes think the battle is about to end. After leveling up to his immortal form, Feng Leixin raises his body temperature to 6,000 degrees, curing all toxins. He tells the protagonist that this ultimate form is an enormous burden on his body and will trouble the enemy into continuously treating himself. He also orders everyone else to retreat to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Soon, the others return to the city through the gate. The necromancer wonders how this is possible, as the poison he left in his opponent's body has disappeared. Then he orders all his troops to take down the martial arts master. In response, Feng Leixin attacks them with a fiery breath. Soon, a whirlwind of blue flames devastates the monsters. As soon as they come into contact with the fire, they evaporate, leaving nothing of their bodies behind. Feng Leixin eliminates 20,000 zombies at once, turning them into ashes. From a distance, Sizzy thinks this power is terrifying. Among the people she knows, Feng Leixin's strength is easily among the top 3. Then one of the allies appears, reporting that the healers from the other 2 boxing gyms betrayed them and the east and west gates have fallen. Feng Leixin is shocked and asks how Ao Donghai and Wu Ruio could betray them. Now, knowing that Pearl City has fallen, he says there's no need to waste time with the zombies. The necromancer states that even if Feng Leixin wins this time, he will leave room for him the next time they meet, despite his arrogance and authoritarian demeanor. Feng Leixin responds that next time he will definitely kill him. To his group, he says that one person is enough there and that everyone else should return to the city for support. He also tells the protagonist that the poison injected into his body has been eliminated, so he can return as well, and asks if he won't melt when reverting to his normal state. In the city, chaos has taken over as mutant beasts have broken through the defenses. From afar, Zhu Zemin observes everything with joy, as this was part of his plan. He remarks that this is what happens when Pearl City is not managed by the Zhu family. Some of his men approach, and he asks about the progress of the plan. One of them reports on the numerous mutant beasts that entered Pearl City and confirms they are under control. Su Jingo says this is excellent and wants to attack the city lord's mansion as soon as possible. However, one of them mentions that the saint is still there and asks if that's really what he wants. He points out that the beasts will be affected by the saint as soon as they approach her, and once the foxes become her servants, he questions how Su Jingo plans to take control. Su Jingo replies that Chen Junting is not yet fully awakened and doesn't have complete control over her powers. She only passively controls creatures unconsciously. If too many mutant beasts approach her, the saint's power will activate and she will dominate them. At that point, the mansion will become vulnerable for them to capture the saint. Meanwhile, the girl is in the lap of one of the foxes being affectionately cared for, until she closes her eyes, and when she opens them, she sees something different. She asks where everyone went, and why so many white ones suddenly appeared. Looking at the fox holding her, she comments that her friend doesn't look well and asks what's happening. But soon she stands up and says that everyone else looks very cute. From afar, Su Jingo observes everything and sees all these powerful creatures, enchanted by the power of a little girl. Back with the saint, she asks if there are more of these companions outside. She then focuses and seems to connect with the outside. She senses more approaching, becoming shocked by their numbers. She lets out a loud scream from inside the mansion. Back in the city, another little girl screams, as she flees from a mutant beast, crying out for her mother. Amid this chaos, Zhang and Sizzy arrive just in time to help. The protagonist quickly charges at the beast and stops it from attacking the little girl. Afterward, he sees the mother reunite with her daughter, and she is deeply grateful for their help. Sizzy tells them to find a safe place to shelter. Zhang then states that densely populated areas are just ahead, and they can't let the beasts advance any further. Sizzy instructs the squad to establish a defensive position immediately, as all people must be kept safe. She tells the protagonist that it's difficult to defend the area with so many mutant beasts causing damage to the structures. Zhang responds that they have to hold the creatures off for as long as possible, precisely to buy enough time for evacuation. Until the mutant beasts change their behavior, they begin to concentrate on a single specific point. Zhang asks what's happening, and Sizzy reports to the leader that the mutant beasts suddenly stop moving, but she doesn't understand why. Su Jingo also doesn't understand as he approaches the saint, confused by her current state. While observing her and unable to believe what he's seeing, Chen Junting opens her eyes, and with an explosion of energy, she spreads her power across a considerable distance. The members of the Zhu family realize they've lost control of all the mutant beasts in the city. Zemin quickly concludes this is the girl's true power, but he imagines there's still a small chance to get what he wants. But then he sees the girl flying toward the city. He orders his men to go after her. However, he begins to feel immense pressure, realizing only a king-level mutant beast could make him feel this way. Then he notices that King Yu has truly awakened. At another moment, Su Jingo looks at the sky and wonders if Chen Junting caused the Moon King to awaken prematurely. Some of his companions ask what he's still doing there and what's wrong. Su Jingo tells them to contact the others who infiltrated Pearl City to capture Chen Junting together, as he still has matters to handle there. He thinks that the Moon King's awakening means Chang's fox side now has a king-level combat force, and he'll surely die if exposed at this moment. He imagines it's safer to stay there and observe the situation. Back in the city, martial artists organize into groups of 3 to gradually eliminate the remaining zombies. One of them asks the pavilion master how he's doing. Feng Leixian replies that he's fine and that most of his injuries have already been healed by Zhang. Now he's just tired and will be fine after resting. His friend expresses anger at the other masters who betrayed them, claiming they are worse than the enemies. Feng Leixian, however, says that since it has come to this, they can only clear the corpses at the southern gate as quickly as possible and then return to the city for rescue. Given the current situation, they can only save as many people as they can. Soon, some see a team of Awakened approaching from the north and wonder if they could be reinforcements. However, the arriving group receives orders from their leader not to let anyone leave the city. They quickly realize it's the Flaming Sun Fist Pavilion and wonder if they're here to start a fight. The rival pavilion leader confirms this. Feng Leixian asks Wu Ruiyu if he still had the audacity to show his face. He then tells his team to prepare for battle as the Flaming Sun Fist Pavilion abandoned the western gate and let the city fall into enemy hands. Feng Leixian then asks Wu Ruiyu why he betrayed the city. The Flaming Sun Pavilion Master asks if Feng Leixian has ever considered living a different life. Feng Leixian questions what kind of life he's referring to. Wu tells him to take a good look at the city, claiming that all those glittering lights, beautiful yet fragile, result in hundreds of deaths every year due to enemy attacks. It seems they're stuck with this small piece of land, and he wonders if it would be better to bring the king among humans. He also asks what kind of scene that would create, as while the king is born in the sacred ancestral village, this city will be forgotten. Even if they're at the ends of the earth, all humans could reside freely without fear of mutant beasts. Feng Leixian then concludes that the students who initially preached the supremacy of humanity in his pavilion were from Wu's people. Wu confirms it, saying Feng Leixian is too late. Otherwise, he could have become one of them. Feng Leixian says he doesn't want that, let alone see the city destroyed. The key figure in the king's birth might cause the sacred ancestral village to emerge just to take one person. Wu declares that since he isn't from the city, he won't be destroyed. He tells Fang Laishan's group not to cause problems in the city, but if they don't retreat, Wu says he'll handle it the old-fashioned way. In the forest north of the city, the Saint appears and Sizzy and Zhang see her up close. The protagonist asks if this is why the mutant beasts suddenly stopped moving. While Chen Junning admires the wolves, Zhang analyzes her. He realizes that she has truly become a fallen one. Sizzy asks how this is possible, but they quickly hide as they see someone approaching. Members of the Zhu family are searching for the girl as they have been tasked with bringing her back at any cost. One of them mentions that Pearl City is now filled with desperate beings, and that the little girl controls all the mutant beasts. He says others have lost contact and only the two of them have failed to complete the mission. The other remarks that even if they die, they will give their all to accomplish the task. Then they hear someone saying that the Zhu family always enjoys scheming in the shadows and that, surprisingly, someone like them has a strong sense of justice. They ask who is speaking, and those approaching comment that these two show more courage than the other Zhu family members they recently encountered. They immediately state they are considering turning them into zombies to serve them. At this, Zhang notes that he has identified someone from the Shengzhou village, whose abilities are very similar to the Saints. Sizzy tells him to try to capture them alive to gather information. The Zhu family members say that now their only choice is to fight with all their might, and perhaps they'll have a chance to escape. Thus, they engage in combat. However, one of them quickly begins to feel the effects of poison. Their opponents haven't even moved, and the Zhu members are already close to passing out. One of the Shengzhou village adversaries states that the more they fight, the faster they will die. The Zhu members try to protect themselves from the poisonous gas and from the beasts sent by the Shengzhou. The adversary claims that their abilities are no longer effective and that they won't last much longer, suggesting they stop resisting and become obedient servants. However, one Zhu member retorts that he shouldn't even dream of it. He then causes a massive explosion, which doesn't harm them only because the animals served as living shields. One of them remarks how close it was as they had the best tank to block the attack. Then the Saint approaches and asks if they are hurt, telling them not to worry as she will heal them. The two Zhu members tell the Saint they are there to welcome her return, and she replies that there is something inside their bodies, and she will help them get rid of it. Soon, they feel that the holy blood in their bodies has lost its effect, and they don't know how this is possible. They beg the Saint to stop, claiming that if she disables their holy blood power, they will suffer dire consequences. However, Chen Junting seems unconcerned with them. She is more interested in helping the beasts than the humans. After healing them, she says she will take the beasts to a much better place. One of the men remarks that this suppression of bloodlines could mean she is awakened. If that's the case, they cannot use a blood connection to guide her as her mind is in chaos. Now they need to return to the sacred ancestral village. There's no other way. They must regroup with the priest before deciding what to do. Sizzy hears everything and wonders if the priest from the ancestral village could have also come to Pearl City. Zhang doesn't know who this is but senses that Sizzy cares deeply about the matter. She explains that the person mentioned is Leu Sizzy. She was once the second lord of Pearl City and is now the most wanted criminal on the squad's list. Moreover, she killed Sissy's master and is responsible for her scar. She is incredibly strong and they need to determine if she has also arrived in the city. Sissy says they currently can't control the Saint, but they can control the two men from the ancestral village. Zhang points out that the Saint and the strongest mutant are long gone, so they can act now. Their plan is to capture the targets alive for interrogation. The men realize someone is hiding behind them and attempt to defend themselves. However, Sizzy approaches and tells them not to move. One of them even tries to flee, but the protagonist surprises him and stops him. Zhang warns that if he tries to release poisonous gas, he'll ensure he meets a horrible end. Sizzy asks the other man about their purpose in coming to Pearl City and whether Leu Sizzy has also arrived there. Even while subdued, the captive claims he has nothing to say, so Sizzy decides to injure him to force him to talk. The protagonist states that if he refuses to speak, he will continue to be harmed and Zhang will heal him, preventing his death. Shortly after, Sizzy contacts the captain, claiming to have important information. She says that, along with Zhang, they captured two people from the sacred ancestral village who reveal that one of the village's objectives is to take the awakened saint. Not only that, but Leu Sizzy is also in Pearl City. The captain understands and tells them to keep an eye on the captives as the worst has happened, and he will personally handle it. He then instructs Manning to prepare a teleportation formation. She asks if the captain truly intends to activate the sun and moon pearls. Since the pearls are hidden in the city square, activating them will reveal their location, and so far the fox leader has not been alerted. Going there now is dangerous. The captain says that his original plan was to lure the fox leader and have Manny trap him. This way there would be no obstacles to activating the sun and moon pearls. But now with Leu Sizzy involved, things have changed drastically. Now the only option is to risk activating the pearls before anyone can react. It's the only way to save Pearl City, and it can't be delayed any longer. At the Monument Square in the middle of Pearl City, a portal opens and the captain emerges with his support team. He observes that the entire city is in chaos, with people's hearts shifting and a powerful wave of change forming. The captain states that he can stop the Zhu family and the beasts, but doesn't know how to stop this wave of public opinion. After this, Lei Aksu appears and asks if he's making a final stand with the sun and moon pearls. Manny asks how she got there, as no one was detected in the square. The captain remarks that the plan was never going to be smooth and warns the others to prepare for battle. Lei Aksu claims that the moment the captain appeared there to resolve the crisis of the living ledger, she had already won. The captain asks why she is so obsessed with winning and whether she has considered that her path as an empress of humanity defies the laws of nature. Forcing the rewriting of rules will cause mutant beasts to rise globally, and humanity could collapse if the king-level conquest fails. Lei Aksu, however, insists that she will not fail, but the captain argues that by raising her sword against innocence, she has already lost. The moment she resorted to such methods, she strayed into deceit, not leadership. Lei Aksu replies that the ancients said a general's success is paid for with the bones of thousands. She claims she's walking the path of the king, where bloodshed is inevitable. Whether deceitful or not, in the path of the king, only the victor remains in the end. The captain says her ambitions are too grand, leading to the ruin of humanity through bloodshed. Lei Aksu retorts that she never expected to persuade him and reveals that she brought some people with her. She states that if the pearl is activated, it will either prematurely awaken the Fox Queen or fail entirely. With this, Lei Aksu aims to let the fox deal with Shibai after she takes the saint away. She declares that no one will activate the sun and moon pearls today, but the captain asks Yu Chenhai, the current city lord, how he could allow this. Chenhai responds that the celestial fox is too strong and Lei Aksu is correct. Humanity needs a king. Therefore, they should unite rather than remain fragmented. The captain argues that Lei Aksu is not a wise ruler and will not succeed on her journey, but Chenhai insists she might be right. He claims that some things must be done, regardless of whether the result is good or bad. Knowing the captain is conservative, Chenhai realizes he can't convince him. Thus, he opposes him in battle. The captain states that the fate of Pearl City will be decided in this battle, and so their future will be determined. Elsewhere, in the residential area of South City Park Woods, the saint asks what lies ahead that could be scaring the beasts accompanying her. Stizzy senses a strange energy fluctuation. Zhang remarks that Chen Junting and the beasts were drawn to her. Stizzy says it's clear the captain has made his move. Stizzy notes how quickly they've arrived. The protagonist asks what will happen to the captives, and she responds that she has already notified the agency to extract them. Thus, they run as fast as they can to join the battle, which has already grown intense. Lei Aksu taunts the captain, saying failure is all he knows. However, he responds that holding her back is more than enough. She doesn't understand, but when she realizes it, she finds herself trapped in a magical force field. It is then that she notices the captain is trying to buy time to attack the Pearl's sun and moon. She orders her loyal servant to retrieve the pearl before the captain can. However, Manny, along with the squad girls, declares that as long as they have breath, they won't let anyone get past them. If that's the case, Chenhai declares they will all die. He then launches an intense attack on them. But Zhang appears with Sizzy and tells the opponent not to feel too confident. He rushes to attack in favor of his group. Stizzy helps Manny and asks if she's okay. Manny responds that she is fine and urges her friend to help in the battle and ensure the enemies don't interfere with the captain's mission. Then Sizzy spots Lei Aksu. Not only that, but she also notices that the saint has arrived. Seeing Chen Junting, Lei Aksu concludes that the Zhou brothers failed and realizes the saint's energy is currently in an extremely frightening state. She wonders if the mother's blood has fully awakened, entering a period of metamorphosis. Chen Junting approaches his sphere of energy. She asks if this is what made the beasts feel danger. However, she has a strange sense of familiarity. When she touches the energy sphere, it becomes even more intense. Lei Aksu questions how such a massive energy fluctuation is possible. The captain doesn't see this as a good sign and says the saint is absorbing the energy of the Pearl's sun and moon. Zhang approaches Stizzy and asks if she's okay. Meanwhile, Chen Junting states that she feels her mother calling her far away from the city. Lei Aksu says this is excellent, as the Pearl's energy helped the saint complete her transformation ahead of schedule. The saint calls all the white foxes to follow her. The transformed Chen Junting must have felt the call from the ancestral village. This way, she will return to the village on her own, and Lei Aksu won't have to lift a finger. After that, Lei Aksu reveals that she hid the saint within the city for a decade, because her power helped complete her plan. She instructs Yu Chenhai to inform their people to escort the saint back to the village. Now that the foxes are free from the saint's suppression, they should regain their senses. Lei Aksu thinks this chaos is enough to keep them busy and that everything is going according to plan. She also reminds herself to act before the Moon King intervenes. Before leaving, she tells the captain that all of his efforts to carry the pearl only ended up helping her. Originally, transforming the saint into the Holy Mother required a complex ritual in the sacred ancestral village, but now everything is resolved, and she intends to seal the saint's destiny. However, Sizzy declares that Lei Aksu cannot leave yet, as she wants revenge for her master's death, seeing Sizzy attempting to attack her. Lei Aksu calls her a foolish girl. With a single strike, she knocks her back. Concerned for his friend, the protagonist rushes to help her. He catches her before she can hit the ground, softening her fall. Seeing Lai Axu leaving, the group questions whether they should pursue her, but the captain states that they need to deal with the crisis in the city first. Manny approaches Zhang and Sizzy and asks if they are okay. Zhang says they are fine and only suffered minor injuries. Sizzy, on the other hand, admits she is still very weak. Manny mentions that the Saint, along with Lai Axu, took the best mutants and infected citizens with them. Then she asks about the source of a peculiar sound. The captain identifies it as the Heavenly Heart Fox King and orders Manny to activate the teleportation circle. Manny then notices the city guards and realizes they are also disguised foxes. The leader of the guards commands the heroes to lower their weapons or else they will all die. As Manny opens the portal, Sizzy remarks that it's a good thing they reviewed the information about the Fox Leader HQ. Zhang says that all of them are foxes, and they should be wary of their invisible attacks. However, the captain assures them there's no need to worry. With his mental resonance activated, he claims he will hold off the enemies. He orders all units to retreat from Pearl City. The group is concerned for him, but the captain asserts that it's an order. Zhang wonders why the Sync didn't take the foxes with her. Sissy responds that the Fox Leader must have activated its protection. The captain tries to hold off the enemies to give the group time to retreat. He reflects that, against the Fox Leader, staying there will only result in more casualties. After everyone passes through the portal, he asks if the enemy leader is going to show herself, telling her to reveal what she's done. Then the Fox Leader appears, claiming he is the strongest human she has ever encountered. Even so, she declares that the captain is no match for her. The captain analyzes the enemy and notices an attribute called reality distortion, leaving him uncertain about its nature. However, he doesn't hesitate and attacks, telling the enemy to use her strongest power. The captain does the same, launching an all-out attack. He aims to melt the fox's insides with extreme heat and then creates steam to detonate her. The fox, however, remarks that while the attack is powerful, it's ineffective. The captain is surprised that his attack didn't have the desired effect. He wonders if his senses were blocked before the fight even began and rules out fighting a clone, as clones disappear when struck. Even so, he's uncertain since this attack could pierce through a mountain. But the fox says he can't hide forever. Now the captain understands the effect of reality distortion. His senses weren't altered as he initially thought. Instead, the reality around him was changed. Thus, the laws of reality have no effect against this enemy's ability. The fox is thrilled to have her opponent in her grasp. However, the captain remarks that fortunately, the fox ability can only distort reality in her immediate vicinity. This renders her attacks ineffective against him, as the captain can conjure a special barrier that manipulates time as a whole, allowing him to present the enemy with a frozen fragment of time. The fox says that even if she's trapped in this space, it doesn't matter, because as long as the captain dies, the barrier he created will disappear. However, the captain activates his time control ability, resetting the time around him and returning to the temporal node when an ability is activated. Hearing this, the fox finds him interesting and claims this space is limited by time. If the captain resets it infinitely, she too will be trapped in an endless loop. But since she can subvert the laws of time, she won't be reset when time returns to normal. She claims the captain won't remember anything that happened, but she will keep the memories of every time she killed him. By killing him repeatedly, he won't die from exhaustion but from frustration. And if the captain doesn't kill her, he'll face a slower demise each time he revives. After all, time will repair the damage he suffers. She declares that humans are truly an evolving race and perhaps the ship that chose other species wasn't wrong. She adds that as long as humans continue to eat others, mutant animals will keep absorbing human potential. The Fox Leader then instructs all clan members to suppress Pearl City immediately, aiming to minimize human casualties. After all, they need humans to reproduce to serve as their food source in the future. Meanwhile, in the southern part of the city, one of the guards interrupts the rival martial artist clan's fight. Feng Leishan asks what the guard is doing. The guard remarks that in the face of such a disaster, humans are still fighting each other and calls it foolishness, even as Feng Leishan claims his opponent is a traitor. The rival leader orders everyone to stop for a moment. He says the patrol team is also here, and since that's the case, they will go all out. He's the first to attack, aiming to kill the patrol leader. But moments later, he feels something invisible grabbing his head. Not only that, but with fox-like hands, the patrol leader kills the rival leader. The patrol leader declares that his team is only temporarily protecting the city lord for a few days, and that a major disturbance has occurred in the city. He then orders everyone to drop their weapons immediately, warning that otherwise they'll be killed mercilessly. Afterward, he tells Feng Leishan to come with him, as he needs someone to explain everything that's happened. Feng Leishan agrees, unaware that the patrol leader is a fox. At safe house number 8, the captain's remaining group regroups while the protagonist tries to calm Sizzy. Manny mentions that her abilities are weakening. Others complain that their strength is depleting faster and their recovery is slowing down. Gradually, they realize they are growing weaker, and the protagonist doesn't understand what's wrong. Stissy immediately attempts to contact the captain. Zhang tries to ask but cannot, and because of that, he asks what happened. Manny explains that the captain granted them a blessing that is a rare ability at a national level. He can permanently confer a certain attribute to others. Unless the one who granted the blessing dies, the power will accompany the others for their entire lives. Luhan's blessing is to have his physical strength loss. Cheng Suji's is to have his fatigue. Zhang Zhang's blessing halved his weight, and Sizzy's reduced her mental power consumption by half. Now that everyone's blessings have disappeared, it means the captain is no longer alive, and Zhang wonders if someone like him could fall so easily. Then he looks at his bracelet, and from it comes a voice saying that the calamity does not exist in this form. Sizzy quickly recognizes the voice and asks the captain if he is okay. As a projection, he replies that within about a year, he might be completely dead because of the fox due to energy exhaustion. Zhang asks if the captain will contact them through the bracelet from now on. He responds that this is only a plan B, but when he truly dies, a part of his consciousness will form a virtual personality and be transmitted through the bracelet because his current self is actually a virtual personality, not the real one. Sizzy asks what needs to be done to save him. Meanwhile, Zhang concludes that this is artificial intelligence with parts of the captain's memory and not truly him. Then, the virtual captain says the situation is almost as he expected. When he was in the city, he already felt his death approaching, but he felt hope in death. Now the king of the Tian Chang clan is trapped in a time loop because of him, and only when his energy is completely depleted can the fox escape. Then he could stay in the monument square and kill the real captain to consume his energy, but he wouldn't be able to act for at least a year. This is the perfect opportunity to act. The virtual captain states that everything depends on Zhang Ping, who has infinite possibilities to attack. The others are somewhat surprised and even ask the captain if it isn't too much to place all hopes on the protagonist. Manny says that Zhang's potential is really good, but he's just a beginner awakener. However, Sizzy defends the captain's decision and asks what needs to be done next. The captain tells them not to be so nervous because this momentary storm is nothing. The Awakeners fighting against the Beastmaster's Zhu family are the ones who truly face despair, and the Zhu family possesses equipment considered, including 5 precious items of the Sun and Moon Pearl level, and their group has nothing. In fact, the captain says their group is not behind the enemy in terms of strength. They just lack a weapon that can hit the king-level mutant beast. The support group leader asks if such a weapon exists. The captain replies that it does, but he warns that only infinite-level ability users are allowed to enter that place, and each infinite-level ability user can only enter once in their lifetime. The captain himself brought an arrow that turned the tide from that place back in the day, and this time it's up to Zhang Ping to take on this task. However, one of the group members says he didn't know the protagonist was an infinite-level ability user. In turn, Zhang says the captain seems to have all the specifications already, so it's time to go. The captain tells the protagonist that this task itself will benefit him, and the place he needs to go to find the weapon is considered humanity's heritage. Not only that, but Zhang could sell secrets of this world that belong only to him through that relic. Manny hears this and no longer wants to wait to depart. Before that, the captain says they shouldn't worry because there are still some things they need to prepare before leaving, and he wants to show something to Zhang. Then they are alone in the safe house dungeon, and Zhang asks the virtual captain if there really isn't a way to rescue his real form. The captain says this is a choice he made after careful consideration, and if he hadn't held off the leader of the foxes, there would only be 2 outcomes, and neither would be pleasant. The first would be failing to stop the attack on the Ancestral Saints village, causing Pearl City to fall into Lai Oxu's hands and half of the Awakeners to die in the conflict. The second would be stopping the attack on the Ancestral Village, but because of the captain's departure, the fox leader would personally deal with the specialists who placed their strength in the city. Now this fox is trapped, and the strongest among the remaining ones is Princess Leu. In a one-on-one situation, those specialists cannot be her opponents. However, if it's a direct confrontation, Princess Leu would not be able to hold her ground. Therefore, even if she wants to kill and replace all the Awakeners who expose their strength, it will take at least 1 or 2 years. In fact, this is the best result they can achieve given their current strength conditions. The captain then tells Zhang to retrieve some blood for the captive hostage. The protagonist asks why he has to get blood for Zhao Yanlong. The captain asks if Zhang has been stuck at level 9 for a long time. Zhang replies that he has, and in the previous battle there was a sign he might advance to level 10 and become an intermediate. But at the critical moment of the breakthrough, he was blocked for no reason. Not only did he fail to level up, but it also felt like it got stuck in his throat. The captain tells him to try drinking some of Zhao's blood. This will awaken new abilities first. Then the captain will provide some guidance on how to proceed. He explains that there is no bottleneck from the initial to intermediate levels. The reason Zhang cannot advance is that he has too many abilities. Awakeners with unique abilities have no choice. They usually decide their path earlier, while an Awakener with multiple abilities must choose a path. Otherwise, it will lead to stagnation in leveling up. So Zhang needs to figure out what he truly wants to become. That way, evolving will become a natural process. Zhang now has to take advantage of the opportunity presented by his new talent and sense the changes in his other talents to keep each ability in a ready state. He must examine himself, clarify the path he wants to follow, understand his truest desires, and his abilities will naturally respond to that. Zhang begins to feel the desired effects. The captain then asks if he has already made his choice. The protagonist says there are many choices and asks if there isn't a way to take the best of all paths. In response, the captain says it depends solely on his heart and has no other advice to offer. Zhang thinks that his biggest hesitation lies between the gem contract and the obscure abilities. The gem contract is the foundation of his abilities, but the obscure abilities also grant him 4 powerful talents. Whether it's Underworld Mist, Pure Water, Pure Blood, or King's Blood, all these abilities belong to the upper level of powerful categories. It can be said that although the obscure abilities derive from the gem contract, their potential is no less than that of the contracted gem. What Zhang needs to do now is choose one of these 2 abilities as the core of his advancement. With that, the captain notices that the protagonist has already made his decision, allowing Zhang to advance to level 10. Zhang realizes he has successfully leveled up and that now, during the crafting of contract gems, he can revise the rules according to his will. Although he has only advanced by 1 level, the difference between a primary and intermediate awakener is significant. His physical and mental strength have increased substantially. Now he can precisely release fire flames, and his ability control is also more refined. The virtual captain notices that Zhang has successfully leveled up. Zhang remarks that it's no wonder Sizzy has combat capabilities after the intermediate stage. It turns out that skill control improves significantly. This happens right after the intermediate stage. As long as he adopts an advanced technique, even transparent and seemingly useless gemstones can be utilized. The protagonist uses one of his gems to try writing something on the ground. He realizes that the hardness of this shared gem must be similar to that of the Mingzhu knife. As an item, it can be transported without being easily damaged. The captain remarks that, as expected, Zhang chose the gem contractor as the core of his advancement. Zhang says he considered choosing others, but felt in his heart that it wasn't the right fit for him. After that, the captain explains that it is easier to obtain abilities in other categories, but the cost is higher and there are dangerous side effects such as death itself. Additionally, Zhang mentions that although the contract gem takes longer to awaken, each new talent awakened by it is highly sought after, like coal in the snow. Next, he hears a voice saying that in the name of the patrol team, they must specifically recruit awakeners to gradually eliminate threats. And they must use a year to eliminate these potential threats. The protagonist quickly identifies this voice as belonging to the fox princess Leu Sizzy. Later, he reunites with the others, and the captain says that, according to new information, the fox princess wants to eliminate the city's specialists, and even recruited a large number of awakened in the name of the patrol team, probably even targeting those who participated in the previous battle. Zhang says he decided to return to the city first because he wants to explain this situation to Feng Guanzhou and the others and hopes they will rescue him from the city. The leader of the support group says this is very dangerous, but Zhang insists that if he doesn't do it, people will be in danger and will either be replaced or consumed. Sizzy says it's too dangerous for him to return to the city alone, so she offers to go with the protagonist. Manny says her group will go as well, as contacting the familiar awakened separately will be faster. The captain warns that he won't be able to tell if the familiar awakened have been replaced by the foxes, making it easier to be exposed. Zhang says he has already advanced to the intermediate stage of awakening and wants to infiltrate alone. Even if discovered, he is confident he can escape safely. The leader objects, claiming that Pearl City is currently like a pool of dragons and a den of tigers, and the protagonist is too important to risk being in danger. Zhang acknowledges this, but is deeply troubled by seeing his comrades being devoured by foxes. He refuses to stand by idly and hasn't yet avenged Su Jingo. He tells the others not to worry because he has a backup plan. Even if he encounters Princess Leu, he claims there won't be any problems. Kolem, the leader of the support group, says that if Zhang wants this, he must defeat him first, and the protagonist accepts the challenge. Zhang quickly strikes, and Kolem barely sees his movements, wondering when he launched the attack. Zhang then declares his victory. Kolem says Zhang is indeed much stronger than he was before advancing. The captain adds that users of infinite-level abilities are not ordinary awakened. When advancing from the primary to the intermediate stage, most only gain the ability to kill beasts beyond their level. But Zhang became capable of defeating an intermediate-level awakened. This was while he was still in the primary stage. He is more exceptional than the captain himself, so the latter does not oppose his return to the city, but says he has a treasure to give him first. The protagonist says he has a task for Shu Zhang to perform before that. Surprised, the boy asks how he can help. Zhang says he can be of great help, but that it's not convenient to explain there, so he wants to take him to a more suitable place to talk. The others only hear the noise of what's happening and understand nothing. Manny asks what the protagonist is forcing the boy to do and what's wrong with him. After that, the protagonist goes with the captain to the sweep team's secret room. Zhang encounters the weapon called the Scythe of Fear. The captain explains that it not only induces fear in creatures, but also evolves by absorbing blood. He used it himself to massacre hordes of beasts in his early years, absorbing the blood of countless ones. Thus, it is now an extremely rare artifact in the world. It's no exaggeration to call it a divine weapon. The Scythe of Fear is currently the most suitable weapon for Zhang. Now he can return to the city, as this will increase his chances of winning in battle. Zhang expresses his gratitude, but the captain remarks that someone seems uneasy. It turns out his energy is also depleted, and he will return to the bracelet to recharge first. Sizzy appears and comments that they're taking their time. Zhang notices the scar on her face is gone, and Sizzy reminds him they agree to have a good conversation as friends, not just as teammates. Sizzy reveals that she has overcome her inner struggles and asked Manhua to heal the scar on her face. The recent incident made her realize she is still very weak, so she is no longer obsessed with revenge. She says Zhang insisted on returning to the city alone and asks if this is also about avenging his childhood friend. After reaching the intermediate level of awakening, Zhang indeed had this thought. After all, he can now clearly feel his growing strength. He is no longer the weakling who could only pretend to sleep and was powerless under Yu Wanzi's inspection. He tells Sizzy not to worry because he can still distinguish between what is serious and what is frivolous. This time, he is returning to Pearl City to save someone. As for avenging Su Jingo, he states he won't act rashly without a good opportunity. Still, Sizzy remains worried about him going alone. Zhang says he has a secret weapon given by Shudong, and nothing will happen to him. After that, he is already inside Pearl City. The Celestial Foxes have significantly increased in number, and their patrol efforts have intensified. They have even closed the central plaza to visitors, not allowing anyone to approach. The virtual captain tells Zhang not to worry about him, as this fox won't be able to do anything for 1 or 2 years. He also asks if the protagonist has already figured out what to do. At the Beast King Boxing Academy in the study wing, Master Feng senses an aura approaching, until Zhang introduces himself, telling the master not to be alarmed. In turn, Feng is happy to see the protagonist and asks where he has been all this time, as he has wanted to thank him personally since that day. But since he couldn't find him, he never had the chance. Zhang says it's a long story. After some time, he explains everything to Feng and asks if he is willing to help. Feng says that if the city lord has already betrayed them, then the true ruler now would be the fox leader, and he is hesitant to fully believe this information. Someone appears, saying the captain of the patrol team is requesting an audience, and Feng tells them to take the captain to the reception room, as he will be there soon. Zhang says that the patrol team has been compromised by the foxes, and Master Feng only needs to take a look to confirm this. After their conversation, the master heads to the reception room. There he welcomes Captain Lin and says he never imagined the captain himself would have the time to come by. Captain Lin says he is there to congratulate Master Feng. Feng asks what brings such joy. Lin says that the city lord has decided to appoint Master Feng as the vice lord of Pearl City, and this will soon be announced to everyone. Feng wonders if this is the true form of the Tiancheng fox, but discreetly says he is deeply grateful for the city lord's kindness. The captain then says the message has been delivered and now he will return to his duties. Feng thanks him and tells him to convey his gratitude to the city lord, though he already sees them as the beasts they are. Then Zhang's aura appears and Feng tells him not to worry, as he won't act while his disparity in strength is so significant. He also assumes that the protagonist is there because he has some plan in mind and asks him to say what needs to be done. Zhang hopes that Master Feng can take advantage of this promotion opportunity and invite all the Awakeners to participate in the city's protection during the celebration. This way, he can identify those who have not yet been replaced by the foxes and those who wish to leave the city through the teleportation gate. Those who do not wish to leave are likely confident in the fox's plan. At least this will allow them to be tracked and prevent them from being easily controlled. Feng says that in truth, some people are tied to their families and cannot choose to leave them behind. But Zhang says that for now, this is all they can do. Zhang notices that many of the Academy's students have been replaced, and there are so many foxes that the Academy is actually hiding it, as he didn't expect such a small place could house so many foxes. Feng says that Zhang has already done enough. In a situation where it is difficult to distinguish friend from foe, no one can protect everyone. He tells the protagonist to proceed as planned, as he will cooperate as much as possible. Zhang thanks him for this. Feng says that they should be the ones thanking him and that he, at least, wants to have hope of ending these beasts. While walking through the academy, Zhang looks at one of the foxes and realizes that she was the one responsible for killing and replacing his childhood friend. His emotions quickly overwhelm him. Elsewhere, the fox princess asks if anything unusual has happened recently. Captain Lin says everything is normal and that Feng is preparing. Leu Sizzy asks if he is eager to apply himself after becoming the vice lord of the city. Another fox asks if they should place someone to watch over him. The princess says there's no need, as Feng is simply taking advantage of the opportunity to gather gifts and money. Thus, he poses no threat to them. She says the others should focus on thoroughly investigating the movements of those sweep teen rats, especially Zhang Ping, who has been causing trouble. At Feng's celebration, some congratulate him on his promotion, saying he should take care of everyone in the future when he becomes the city lord. Feng says they are all too kind, until one of his men arrives to deliver some information. Shortly after, the pavilion master announces that he must excuse himself to address an important matter. He apologizes for any lack of hospitality or shortcomings at the celebration. Captain Lin says that Feng is really just trying to make money, just like the previous one. His companion draws attention to a woman present, saying she is truly very beautiful, and Lin asks if his fox colleague has her eyes on this woman. Regardless, he tells her she can stay there and do whatever she wants, but she must wait for the banquet to end before acting and remain discreet. The fox, disguised as Su Jingo, agrees. Elsewhere, one of those present asks why Mr. Feng called them there. Feng says he summoned everyone there for something important and he will reveal all the details. Then the protagonist appears at the scene. Everyone is surprised to see him, even his instructor Bai, who hasn't seen him for some time. After a while, Zhang explains everything, but they find it hard to believe, claiming that if this were true, the city should have fallen a long time ago. Bai says he interacted with Lin Kidi and other members of the patrol and noticed something strange. Chen Weihu also observed that the city lord hasn't appeared in public for some time. Feng asks for everyone's attention, saying that, as Zhang mentioned, he personally confirmed the existence of infiltrated foxes. These beasts are adept at disguises, making it hard to distinguish them from others. In fact, many people at the banquet have already been replaced by them. The master says everyone there has known him for some time, and if they trust him, they should help him. Chen Weihu says she will do anything Feng asks. Bai agrees and says Zhang is his student, and he believes what he says. The protagonist explains that to deal with the foxes, they must temporarily put aside their pride and preserve their strength. The people on this list are those who haven't been replaced by the leader fox and can inform them of their situation individually. The sweep team will activate the teleportation array later. If they are willing to go with them, these people must leave through the front gate and then return to the teleportation array to leave. One of them says this is too sudden and asks how they will alert their families. Fen explains that there's no other way. Currently, only Zhang Ping can identify the fox's disguises, and there's no time to analyze everyone from the families. If word gets out, the leader fox might speed up the massacre of the awakened. So those who decide to stay must be careful of any unusual individuals around them. Otherwise, their families will take over the patrol team's control for now. Bai agrees, saying that with so many people, it's hard to ensure the information won't leak. Zhang tells them to secretly observe if the fox Tian Chong at the banquet behaves suspiciously, and to use fire as a signal to alert everyone. Now the rest is up to them. Back at the banquet, everyone tries to act normally according to the plan and bids farewell to the guests. Meanwhile, the protagonist observes everything from a distance. Almost everyone at the banquet has been notified, and so far it seems the fox Tian Chang hasn't noticed anything unusual. Suddenly, Zhang hears Su Jingo's aura warning him to be careful. Soon, he notices something unusual. He sees that one of the foxes is targeting Chen Weihu. He thinks he must find a way to lure it away. Otherwise, if it catches anything, the entire plan will collapse. The disguised fox approaches Chen Weihu and asks if she is leaving so soon. Chen Weihu asks what's going on. Su Jingo responds that she's heading in the same direction, and since Chen Weihu is alone, would like to take a walk with her. Zhang notices the fox is indeed taking the initiative to reveal itself and thinks this is a good opportunity to make a move. He decides to step out of the shadows and show himself. The protagonist tells Su Jingo that it's been a long time since they last saw each other, pretending not to know she's a disguised fox. Zhang approaches Chen Weihu and tells her to go to Feng and say he's in trouble, asking him to meet him in the west of the city. The disguised fox sees the protagonist and wonders how he managed to enter the city. It quickly thinks it only wanted a small bite, but didn't expect to catch such a big fish, because taking him to its leader would surely make her happy. However, Zhang starts running away. The fox, disguised as Su Jingo, asks why he's running. Zhang activates his Nightwalker of Darkness ability. He starts running even faster. This makes the fox wonder how he can run so fast. The protagonist turns a corner and loses the pursuing fox until he suddenly reappears, and with his new weapon, strikes the fox directly. It backs away and Zhang asks the disguised Su Jingo if she will continue running. Still furious over his friend, he declares that he won't let the fox have a quick death. The fox realizes that her highness was right. Although she doesn't know how Zhang does it, she's sure he can see through her disguises. She tries to recall what his abilities are, but the protagonist doesn't want to hear any of it and launches another attack. Because of this, the fox wonders if he was created by the mists. But her lack of focus in the fight caused her to be struck by the protagonist. Zhang summons chains of dark magic. He says that, although he hasn't been aware of it for long, it was because of this fox that he accepted his current identity. This brings him peace so he doesn't feel uncomfortable. The fox asks what he's talking about, and she wonders when Zhang Ping became so strong. The protagonist says that to him, Su Jingo was his childhood girlfriend and the most important person in his life. She only wanted to fulfill her dreams, but the fox didn't allow that to happen. He asks why this fox hurt his friend. However, the fox says he will never know how desperate Su Jingo's expression was when she died. Hearing this, Zhang intensifies his attacks, inflicting even more pain on the enemy. The fox begs him to kill her, even going so far as to plead using the image of his deceased friend. However, Zhang rips that mask off her face and becomes even more enraged with the fox. He says he will grant her wish for death. Afterward, he delivers a fatal blow, sending the ordinary fox to the afterlife. Even so, he still feels terrible about what happened to Su Jingo, until, out of nowhere, the fox princess appears, saying she saw Zhang defeat one of hers on his own. This indicates that he has improved significantly since their last encounter. Leu didn't expect him to dare return to the city and asks if Zhang is eager to die. The protagonist asks how she knows he doesn't have other tricks up his sleeve. Then, he immediately tries to analyze her. The princess says he's still trying to fight even when he's about to die and blocks his identification. But due to his persistence, she says she will let him die knowing. Thus, the identification succeeds. Her attribute panel is revealed, showing her as an alien fox, princess of the Moon Clan with potential and a level of 39, alongside an array of talents. An intense battle ensues between the two. Zhang defends himself with a shield formed by his dark energy, until he unleashes his strength and summons the Scythe of Fear. However, the enemy's attack interrupts his defenses. Zhang realizes that his dark energy is still too weak. He just identified that Leu Sizzy's primary attack is with her tail. This makes him think that the pure water body might avoid physical damage, rendering the enemy's attacks ineffective against him. Leu Sizzy notices that he has more than one ability, but she claims that he won't be able to escape so easily. Because no matter how many abilities he has, she asserts that Zhang cannot compensate for the gap in strength. The protagonist sees that the fox has lowered her tail to an extremely low temperature and has frozen his pure water body. The princess says she's curious and remarks that even Queen Illusion cannot be seen by Sidhu Shibai. She then asks how Zhang manages to see her and what method he uses. He has no intention of answering and can only think that, although he cannot use two talents simultaneously, he can alternate between them. After that, Leu Sizzy steps on a red gemstone, and Zhang thinks that the martial pact might compensate for this. The explosion was only enough to create a window for him to escape. Leu Sizzy calls it a petty trick, but she realizes that Zhang truly managed to escape her and asks if he's going to run away again. The protagonist sarcastically says he's afraid of being alone and helpless, making it hard to escape. Then he reveals that he decided to ask for help. The fox Leu Sizzy wasn't expecting this, because shortly after, she sees two martial masters approaching to help the protagonist. Bai says the others have been evacuated, and Feng asks what's happening. Leu Sizzy realizes that Feng and Zhang are now working together, something she wasn't prepared for. So since he cannot be useful to her plans, she declares it's time for everyone to die. Zhang pushes Feng away and prevents him from being attacked, but ends up getting injured in the process. He tells the others not to worry about it and warns that Leu Sizzy is a fox. Feng then understands and tells Bai to take care of his student. Bai cannot believe she's a fox because he clearly sees her as human. Zhang uses one of his abilities on the master and tells him not to be scared as he won't hurt him. He then instructs Bai to look the fox again, and now Bai is able to see its true nature. Seeing Feng ready to take action, Zhang tells him to be careful with their wastes. This way, Master Feng understands what he must do. He leaps forward, but even so, he is caught, realizing that the enemy has very high attack power. Zhang tells Instructor Bai to open his left hand with the outer palm facing outward. Bai sees his hand bleeding, and the protagonist instructs him to make sure Master Feng swallows the blood. Bai understands and says he has a good way to make that happen. He throws the blood and says the wind blows and keeps it steady. Feng hears this and realizes it is a code. He quickly understands that he must swallow the blood Bai has thrown. By doing so, Feng is also able to see the fox's true form. With this, he can dodge its attacks more easily. Bai doesn't want to be left out and prepares to help. Feng demands that the fox return the lives of his students to him. Along with this, he invokes his fire powers. Zhang explains that the guild master has just swallowed his blood, which can temporarily reveal the enemy's form, but the effect is short-lived. Feng, however, says it will be enough. He and Bai launch their attack. This confuses the fox as it doesn't understand why even it can now see through its illusion. It deduces this must be Zhang Ping's doing. Leu Sizzy finds this extremely unsettling. However, she no longer cares what method the protagonist is using to achieve this. She has already decided that she will kill them all. She calls for the help of the fox Yu Ying. Thus, the allied fox emerges from the depths and introduces herself, ready to assist in the fight as Her Highness commanded. Feng warns that he sensed another fox emerging from the depths, and it is very strong. Zhang realizes this is no illusion and wonders how this fox could have hidden in the shadows as he hadn't noticed it until now. He's unable to use the evaluation technique in his pure blood state and doesn't know exactly what abilities this allied fox has. He then gives Feng his last piece of snake scale. However, the master says that even in his blaze form, he won't be able to defeat the two foxes. But the protagonist reassures him, promising that everyone can escape Pearl City. He insists that the two of them just need to buy him some time. Feng agrees to use the item, saying they entrust their lives to Zhang.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.